Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's plans panel. Now, just before we go into the formal business, I think we are all acutely aware that we are today missing a colleague of this panel who sadly passed away last week. I think it's fair to say that many of us here will miss Mahalia, her kindness, her generosity and her commitment to the people of this city. So just before we begin the formal business, I'd like to ask everyone who can to possibly stand in a minute's silence to remember our colleague. Thank you. So, going on to the formal business. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the South and West Plans Panel. My name is Councillor Paul Ray, and I will be chairing today's meeting. Can I remind everybody that today's meeting is being live streamed on the Leeds City Council YouTube channel so that members of the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. Could I remind members of the public present that this is a formal meeting? While we welcome your attendance, we ask that you do not approach members of the panel during the meeting and that the proceedings are observed quietly and without interruption. If this is not adhered to, you may be asked to leave and the meeting will be suspended to facilitate this. South and West Plans panel deals with applications from the south, north west and west of the city. The aim of the panel is to hear all the relevant information from applicants, members of the public, the council officers and council officers to help members of the panel make their decision. Can I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves and mute their microphones once they've introduced themselves? If I could please start from my left.
Lawrence Hill, Principal Planning Officer.
Good afternoon, I'm John Booth, Principal Highways Engineer.
Simon Clothier, Environmental Health.
Hi, I'm Councillor Fiona Venner and I represent Kirkstall Ward.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Andy Rontry. I also represent Kirkstall.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andy Parnham and I am a councillor for Armley Ward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor John Garvani, Horsforth Ward.
Good afternoon. My name's Councillor Kayleigh Brooks and I'm Little London and Woodhouse Ward.
Good afternoon. My name's Daniel Illingworth and part of the Plans Panel team.
Good afternoon. Councillor Penny Stables from Wetherby Ward.
Councillor Sam Firth for the Harewood Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Barry Anderson, Adlan Wharfdale Ward.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Prosser, I'm the clerk to the panel.
Good afternoon, Philippa Plumtree-Varley, Principal Legal Officer and Legal Advisor to panel today.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Carr, Head of Development Management.
Good afternoon, Steve Butler, Group Manager for South and West Leeds and Lead Officer at South and West Plans Panel.
Thank you very much for that, everyone. Moving to the agenda, could I ask the clerk to go through items agenda number 1 to 5, please?
Thanks, Chair. Agenda 1, there's no appeals. Agenda item 2, no exempt items. Agenda item 3, no formal alert items. Agenda item 4, members to declare any interest. Thank you. Agenda item 5, apologies from Councillors Finnegan and Jones, and we have Councillor Gavani here as a substitute for Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much for that. Item number 6, minutes of the previous meeting held on Thursday, the 23rd of October 2025. Do member accept these minutes as a true and correct record? I'll take silence as a yes. Are there any matters arising? No, perfect. Item number 7, appeal update. Newall Church Hall, Newall, Carr Road, Otley, LS21 2AF. Could I ask the officer to provide an update on the appeal?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the item is brought to Plans Panel for information to provide members with an update on the recent appeal decision at Newall Church Hall, New Carr Road, following the refusal of Planning Permission at the Plans Panel on the 31st of October 2024. Members will recall that application, but just to refresh.
It's all right, it's just a bit quiet.
just to refresh the memory of the application. The application is on a greenfield site, an area of local green space to the north of on the northern side of Otley, here close to the Wharfdale Hospital. Just to move on. The application site is an area of designated green space with Newell Church Hall to the front of the site, residential properties to the north, and play area to the south. To recap of the layout of the scheme. Mate. And this is the view of the Newell Church Hall from the road frontage. So this is the scheme. It involved the conversion of the church hall to two dwellings with vehicle access off Newell Church Hall to the north of the church hall. Two detached properties were located in the site, and a pair of semis at the rear of the site. The plans for the conversion of the church, very limited alterations with two bedroom dwellings within the building. The designs of the dwellings with traditional stone and slate dwellings. These are the images of the detached properties, and just going on. These are the detached the images of the semi-detached properties at the rear of the site. So members will recall that the application was presented to Plans Panel on the 3rd of October 2024 and was recommended for approval by officers who considered that the benefits of the residential development in this location, on balance, outweighed the loss of the area of natural green space. Following discussions, members resolved not to accept the recommendations, raising a number of issues which are outlined in the report. The application was subsequently deferred for consideration of the concerns of the panel, and it was returned to the Plans Panel on the 31st of October 2024 with two reasons of refusal to be agreed. These were relating to the loss of the area of designated natural green space and the negative impact the development would have on the setting of Newell Church Hall. Following the refusal, the applicant subsequently appealed the decision. In determining the appeal, the inspector considered that there would be limited harm from the loss of the area of natural green space, and considered that the harm would be outweighed by the creation of 6 well-designed dwellings within a residential area, together with the retention and simplified conversion of Newell Church Hall. The appeal was therefore allowed. The applicant also submitted a cost application citing both unreasonable procedural and substantive behaviour by the council. However, the inspector dismissed the cost application, reasoning that while they had not agreed with the planning authority's decision, the refusal was reasoned and substantiated, and there was nothing before him that demonstrated unreasonable procedural behaviour in reaching that decision. As I say, that cost application was refused.
Do members have any comments on that before we close that item? No, thank you very much for that. Moving on to item number 7. No, number 8 now, should I say? Land at 32 1EN. Could I ask the officer to present the application? Oh, they're just coming now.
Thank you, Chair. The next application for consideration by members is change of use to a dog training facility, use of the kennels, demolition and erection of outbuildings, and the erection of a new boundary treatment on land at 32 Whitecoat Lane in Bramley, Leeds. Just to run through the presentation, provide ward members with a slide showing the extent of the site and the applicant's dwelling and the land surrounding the applicant's dwelling. As you can see on that slide there, it's number 32, and the applicant's dwelling is to the southwestern area of the site within that red line. And just an aerial shot for members' reference showing the position of the wider site and the context of the area. The site is within the green belt. Obviously, the green belt's to the west of the application site there, with areas of agricultural land and existing mature trees to the sort of, as we go down Whitecoat Lane to the side and the back of the property. The dwellings to the south and the east of the site both are on Whitecoat Lane, and there's dwellings to Valley Road, with the property's rear gardens are adjacent to the application site. Just slightly delayed there. Just to run through, members, some photos of the site. Sorry, the slide's just jumping. Apologies. Yeah, I think that's try that one, Steve. Thanks. Yeah, that's better. Sorry about that. So these photos show the internal arrangement of the area at the back of the property and the changing levels. So there's an existing paddock at the rear of the garden of the property itself with a detached store, garage area, and the retaining wall, which you'll see there separating the driveway from the upper levels. These pictures show the existing stable block to the western side of the site and the driveway area below the level of the paddock. Again, some further photos to demonstrate the levels. The properties to Valley Road are in the background on the photo on the left there in front of you, which back onto the site with the existing mature trees, which you can see there. They're to be retained as part of the development. There's an embankment which slopes down from that area to where the paddock is. And on the photo on the right, it shows the applicant's property. On the right-hand side of that block of properties, it's actually divided up into separate dwellings. The applicant's dwelling is on the right-hand side with the conservatory there, and the driveway and the vehicle access is obviously there on that photo for reference. These slides show the existing store area, which is in a state of disrepair. This is to be rebuilt as part of the development with the same footprint and scale and use of storage. That's further indicated on the upcoming slides, can show that. And finally, there's just a view of the paddock area from the upper level on the right-hand side there for members, again with the store and the stables beyond that at the lower level. This is a plan. Basically just put this on to give members an overview of the existing arrangement. Again, the applicant's property is to the southwest of the site with the driveway and the parking area there, and the area shown on red there is the adjacent dwellings and the neighbouring properties to Whitecoat Lane, and obviously on the right hand side there are the properties to Valley Road. Again, just for information, that's the existing store and the outbuildings. And again, just to show members the levels across the site, it slopes down from the east to the west towards where the existing stables and store area is. The properties to Valley Road would be on the right-hand side of this plan if they were shown. So turning to the proposed layout, there's a central paddock area that's going to be used for sort of the main dog training and exercise area. That's to be enclosed with new acoustic fencing at 2.4 metres in height, along with an internal planting buffer within that area. Access to the exercise area, is at the back of the paddock, as you can see on the plan there, via new gates at the back. Parking and access is taken via the existing driveway to the sort of southwestern corner next to the applicant's property. There's new parking spaces which are to be formalised for visitors and users. The dog boarding element of the scheme, that will take place in there's a store area which is, I'll just point to the screen up there, there's an existing store area which is just up here That's to remain the same size and scale, and that's to be given over to dog boarding. And then there's a further dog boarding area, which is the applicant's attached garage. That's going to be converted to a dog boarding area as well. Again, they're not to be sort of additional extensions. They're just going to be a change of use formalised as part of the application. The photos will show the combined new outbuilding and store, which we showed during the pictures. This area here behind the existing neighbouring properties is to be rebuilt to a combined outbuilding and store, sort of in place of the existing store that's in disrepair. There is to be new lighting as well as part of this scheme. You'll just see on the perimeter of the plan here, the 6 new pole-mounted lights to the perimeter of the site. There will be a total of 2.5 metres in height, and we're looking to secure details of those by way of condition, requiring a lighting survey and details of how that will work as part of the application, the discharge. And finally, just plans showing you the extent of the sort of proposed store, which is to be rebuilt, and the existing stable area, which is to remain the same. Obviously, notwithstanding the internal change to the area just within this zone, which is going to be used for dog boarding. So finally, just to run through and provide an overview for members, we've received a total of 56 letters of objection to the application. They raise issues relating to noise impacts upon neighbouring residential properties, impacts in terms of highway safety, harm upon the green belt, issues relating to the lighting and potential overspill for the lighting, harming amenity, privacy and adverse impacts upon privacy, and over dominance through the erection of obviously fencing and elements which are proposed within the site itself. On the consultation, 37 letters of support have been received as well. They raise support in terms of the business will provide a needed service. There are no similar uses in the vicinity. The impact upon the greenbelt is limited, the support letters conclude, and there are support on the basis of supporting small independent businesses as well. The panel request was received from Bramley and Stanley Ward members on the basis of concerns in terms of noise upon the neighbouring properties and the close proximity of residential properties to the proposed use. We have received some further representations, some on the 22nd of January, and a further set of representations from the ward members, which raise similar concerns to those which have been raised within the main objections, again raising issues about privacy and the aspects from the existing dwellings on Whitecoat Lane. Environmental health officers have been consulted as part of the development. They raised no objections given the sort of operational parameters of the business and the suggested conditions. What the applicant has agreed to as part of the negotiations through the consultation and negotiation with officers is to amend the scheme to a 12-month temporary use. That's with a view to provide a monitoring period. And then obviously after that period, the applicant would need to reapply for permanent consent should they want to do so. There are a raft of conditions recommended for members' consideration in terms of the application, including the opening hours and operation of the business, which is to be between 9 AM and 7 PM. There are conditions, again, recommended restricting the number of the overall number of dogs on the site to 8, with further restrictions relating to drop-off and collection between 2 windows, time windows. That would be between 9 and 11 AM, and then the afternoon, evening drop-off collection between 4:30 and 6:30. And that also includes provision within those conditions for a 15-minute gap between drop-off and collection to prevent an over-intensive use or multiple users attending at the same time. So with that in mind, the proposed change of use is considered acceptable by officers in principle and not to cause significant harm to residential amenity or impacts upon highway safety, given the recommended conditions. The proposed change of use is considered an appropriate form of development within the green belt for the reasons outlined within the report, and thus is in accordance with the MPPF and the core strategy, and therefore the application is recommended for approval subject to the aforementioned conditions within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I can just make one sort of addendum to that. There was a email sent by Councillor Richard earlier this week, which may or may not have actually hit your inboxes. We wouldn't normally obviously recommend that members took that into consideration at such a late time, but I just want to make it clear that Mike actually has taken into consideration those comments in terms of the distances, but also on site this morning. We ran through that with the members that were actually on the site visit. Thank you.
Thank you for that, both. Could I now invite any opposers to the application to the is Councillor Ritchie, who will have 4 minutes to speak, but I believe he'll have someone else with him as well. You will have 4 minutes to speak. Once you are ready, please indicate that to the officer when you wish to start.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak today and represent the community. When reading the Planning Officer's report, I'm afraid I have questions about the proposed development, and it does not provide reassurances about the impact on amenity for local residents. While I appreciate the officers have done a lot of work on the application, we as a community feel there are some errors. We understand there's been some comparison made to the Carverley dog exercise field that was granted permission in June 2022. However, we don't feel this is comparable due to the close proximity of housing and the different purposes for intended use. The report states that the acoustic fence panel will be put up on the perimeter of the paddock. This isn't true. The acoustic fence panels will create an internal arena for training. The Planning Officer's report in paragraph 56, the Planning Officer acknowledges that the fencing is nullified due to the levels of the land, so I won't be able to see it. That means that I will also be able to see over the fence, and anybody inside the arena will be able to see me. Including the residents of Whitecoat Cottages, which have not been considered at all in the report. The person who lives at 24 Whitecourt Lane must be most affected, however their property doesn't get a mention. There are a large number of properties, residential properties surrounding the field and in the local area who will be affected by the inevitable noise from dogs barking. The noise management report does not make reference to the acoustic fence panelling. By putting this up, they know that noise is inevitable. The fencing is nullified in terms of visual impacts, so therefore we can assume that it will be nullified in terms of its acoustic properties. The report makes reference to a lighting plan. I've been informed that this lighting plan will be written after the permission has been granted, but how can we feel confident that it will have a negligible impact on the residential amenity and when we don't even know what it's going to recommend? We feel that flood lighting is not in keeping with the local area and feels out of touch on Greenbelt land. The applicant states that this is a small-scale operation, however business from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. 7 days a week is excessive and is a commercial enterprise. This only relates to the training facility. Dog boarding is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Due to the nature of training, dogs attend with their owners and the busiest hours will be after the conventional hours of work, namely evenings and weekends. This is a time when most residents will be at home trying to relax and enjoy their homes and gardens. Residential amenity will be severely impacted by the activity within the arena and the timings of training. In paragraph 65, the Planning Officer states that the applicant will reduce her hours in winter. However, I've seen no reference to this. This paragraph is copy and pasted from the planning report from the Carverley dog exercise field. It's an exact replication of the paragraph 61 from that report, and we question its relevance to this application. Local residents have concerns over the access to the site. The road is a single-track road with no footpath leading to a public right-of-way. The intensification of traffic using this road could cause risk to other road users and pedestrians. The report says that highways were in approval of this, but this was not my understanding when reading it. There's a big box that says highways recommend revised plans should be submitted showing a resurfacing plan. In paragraph 67, it says that the vehicles will travel to the site away from houses on Whitecoat Lane. In reality, they have to drive past the houses. Our concern has to be around the 12-month temporary licence. What reassurances can local residents have that the applicant will not run the business to a minimal capacity, hence receiving no complaints which would deceive the team into granting full permission? And then also, after 12 months, if the application is objected to, will the applicant have to return the land to its current state, removing all fencing and lighting? In paragraph 20 of the report, the consultations, the landscapes report which objected to the proposal is omitted. I can go on about the different aspects of the report which we feel are unjust and based on opinion. We've not even talked about the dog boarding element, the green belt, the effect on local wildlife and bats. Many of the local residents have lived here for a long time, some for over 50 years. As a community, we are struggling to see how the gain of one outweighs the residential amenity of many. Please, can someone help us understand this? Thanks for your time.
Thank you. You've still got time if you want to. Are you done? I'll give you another extra 20 seconds there because I thought you'd finished, so I apologise.
So I just want to reiterate to members that the green belt determination is the officer's opinion, so members are free to make their own mind up whether they agree that it is a recreation activity rather than a business use. And to reiterate, the Carverley application is a very different application. The houses were much further away. And the
last sentence, please, Councillor.
Yeah, the highways officer recommends a 60-minute gap, but the officers have gone for 15 minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. And again, apologies for cutting you off slightly a bit early there. Apologies. So, members, questions for the objectors, please. Any questions? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ritchie, you have a dog, don't you? Yes. Okay. I wanted to ask a question. I wanted to ask your opinion on a couple of paragraphs in the report which relate to the issue of barking and concerns that have been raised about barking. And in paragraphs, I think it's 61 to 67, there seems to be a suggestion that having a dog facility won't be that different to how it is now because dog walkers use the surrounding area. So I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. Like when you take your dog for a walk, does he bark a lot when you take him for a walk? Does he bark when he meets other dogs? In your opinion, is this comparable, that having a dog facility where you'll have up to 8 dogs training at once will not generate more noise than dog walkers walking their dogs in the surrounding fields could? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. No, I think it is very different. So it's local to me, and it's a path that I tread regularly. In fact, I went down this morning while I went past the fun bus while you were on your site visit. And dogs do interact, as you know. They can get excited, even dogs from the same family. So I would say there's likely to be noise, very different to actually walking past and through an area. I'd also highlight down in Rodley, there's a doggy daycare centre at Rodley Recreation Ground. Now, I'm on the board of William Merritt, which is the other side of the canal, and when we're in our board meetings, you can always hear barking, and the manager there has confirmed that it's all day long, so I would conclude it's very different to the recreational activity of dog walking down a public right-of-way.
I know there's a path down the back from my house on Valley Road. We can't hear any noise at the moment. Those dogs in the field will be literally on my boundary. It's a different situation completely, in my opinion.
Any follow-up, Councillor Venner? Councillor, I've completely forgot you. Councillor Firth, I had a moment there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Can I just ask, you mentioned obviously there was an email that was sent from Councillor Ritchie before this meeting. Given that we obviously there's a discussion about whether it should be in for consideration, is there anything else that you want to add that was in that particular document, or in that you maybe wanted to tell us that maybe we shouldn't consider with that document?
Yeah, thanks for that. So that was some additional information from Mrs. Devine, so I'll let her explain that. And I did pass it on to the chair initially to see if, out of courtesy, to see if he would circulate, and he advised me that it wasn't appropriate, but we could send it directly, so that's what I did.
So I compiled that report, and it was more of this so you could see it from a different perspective. I understand that when you did your site visits this morning, from the stables, when you can look up, our properties do look quite far away, but realistically they're not. My house is like literally from where they're proposing to put the dog arena, is from the middle of the field where the apple tree is to my living room windows and doors and back door is less than 30 metres, and I'm going to suggest that you're not that much further away right now. And then also within the report, the lady who lives at 24 Whitecoat Lane doesn't get a mention about her privacy. So the access to the field and the storage will go past her kitchen window and her lounge window. Those fences are there. And then when they demolish the current garage there, it will reduce her privacy for her bedroom as well. In the retrospective planning permission that was granted in 2023, it specifically states that her privacy would not be affected due to it remaining as paddock use and not garden. So what's changed in the last 2 years, which states that it now can be used to have potentially up to 160 people a week in that field, but her privacy isn't going to be impacted. I've not put that in the thing, but it was just those photographs and the maps that I kind of just to kind of show you actually the close proximity from a different perspective.
I would just want to note that, just as a matter of point, we don't note property numbers in the report, so their considerations may have been taken into consideration, but for privacy reasons we don't give specific properties. Any other questions to the objectors? Councillor Parnham.
Thanks for your presentation. 2 quick questions, maybe one for Councillor Ritchie, one for yourself. First, to you as a resident, would the repositioning of the sound fencing, which you made a point of saying they're in the wrong place, if they were brought out of the arena, would you think that would make a positive difference to residents' attitudes? And secondly, perhaps to Councillor Ritchie as a dog owner and somebody who's maybe done some research on this issue, do you think 8 is a feasible number for boarding, or do you think it's pushing towards... Because I wouldn't be happy as a panel member or a resident to see more than a very limited number of dogs. So is it something that you think might be sustainable long term or not? I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
So in terms of where the panelling is placed, I've been advised by a few people. One of the people who lives in our street is related to music and sound insulation. And we've been advised that actually the soundproofing properties of the fence isn't that great. And then due to the line of sight within the property, it's going to be ineffective. So the sound travels in all directions, and the decibels of dog barking is going to be, the fence panelling is not going to be appropriate for use for that. And I'm not a sound engineer, I'm a teacher. So I've had to come here today, take time off, and I don't honestly know, but there's no reference within the sound management, the noise management of the acoustic fence panelling. And when I read like aspects of it, I don't know if it's going to be effective because that's not my job. But there's no reference to it in the report. There's no telling me how effective it's going to be in terms of dog management and the decibels that dogs do bark at, which I've been told is a minimum of 80 decibels and above. 4 dogs barking in the field at any one time for 6 hours a day, every day of the week, is excessive.
Any follow-up, Councillor Parnham? Sorry, Richard. Sorry, we couldn't hear Councillor Richard.
Yeah, so in terms of the number of dogs, I think with anything, the more dogs that are together, the more excited they'll be and the more likelihood there is of noise. But I've only ever been a single dog owner, so I can't particularly comment on that. I just want to add, on Councillor Ray's point about the report, and I understand you don't name properties. I think the point is there were a reference to the nearest properties being Valley Road, when actually the nearest properties are the adjoining properties on Whitecoat Lane, and that's what Mrs Devine is talking about.
I'm sure a member will raise that question to the officer when it's at the appropriate point. Councillor Stables.
Thank you, and thank you for that information. It was actually just following up on the fence question, and I just wanted to understand from you and your neighbours. I understand that the fence, 2.4 metre fence, will actually be to the height of the current wall, so there will be no visibility of it from your houses. But I also understand that by doing that, obviously you've not got the acoustic, it's not going to prevent the sound travelling in terms of barking. What's your view in terms of that fence being at a higher level? Because it may help in terms of reducing the noise, but you would then have the visibility of the fence. What's your view on that?
Ultimately, there's this greenbelt land, you're proposing to put up an internal dog arena. Yes, it's got no roof on it, but now it's a solid structure within a greenbelt field. So then you are affecting the openness of the greenbelt. 2.4 metres at the moment is kind of nullified in terms of its visual impact, but ultimately you're now creating a solid structure within a field. From the aspect down by the stables, when they did when they levelled the van land 2 years ago, there is that retaining wall already there. I don't know because I've not been down there. I've been informed that that retaining wall is 3 metres high already. Once you then put another fencing panel on top of that, you're now creating a solid wall of 5.4 metres. Is that really in keeping with greenbelt land and the aspects that's there to protect? And then the residents of the bungalow would have this 5 metre wall to outside their back door, basically. So while, yes, you say the raising of the fence panels would help with the acoustics, is it appropriate?
So yeah, I'm just kind of understanding your position on it from a panel perspective. So if this was to go ahead, but there was an option of raising the fence to a higher level which would help with the noise, would you be in favour of that or not?
No.
Any follow-up, Councillor?
Yeah, I think it's important to say, although the impact is nullified, as it says in the report, they still will be able to see it from the back garden, so it will be affecting the openness of the green belt. So I think that's important to say. Thank you.
Then I'll bring in Councillor Gavan here.
That wasn't our understanding when we did the site visit. We were told it would be to the height of the wall.
Maybe something we can pick up with the officers and we'll get to that point. Councillor Gavani.
Thank you, Chair. You just said about a 3 metre high wall, which, if you're looking at that plan there, which is it that you're saying is 3 metre high? If you've got the stables on the left.
Yeah, so the stables on the left, so directly opposite the stables, when they levelled the land, like I said, I've not been down there. I've just been given some information from the last report.
It's nowhere near 3 metres tall.
Right, okay. I've just been given
10 foot and it isn't.
Right.
That's not 3 metres.
Can we just bring up the drawing quite quick, I think, just for clarity? Yeah.
Yeah. You can see there on the picture on the right, with those items, that's nowhere near 3 metres.
I mean, we can formally clarify that when we get to questions to the officers, but yeah. Any other questions to the objectors, please? Sorry, colleagues, we slightly very into comments there. Any other questions? Thank you very much both for your time. If you'd please like to go back to the public gallery. Could I now invite up the applicant, please, and their supporters. You'll have 4 minutes to speak once you indicate to the officers that you're ready to begin.
Thank you, Chair. As you've heard from the case officer already, there have been extensive negotiations throughout the application process, and we thank the authority for their proactive approach to get to a position whereby the officer can recommend approval to you all today. Just for a point of clarity, the objectors referenced Colverley and Rodley as similar situations. These are dog exercise fields and dog daycare centres where there is no element of training or a professional on site, whereas this one is very different in that the applicant is very experienced in dog training and the exercise on the site will be in a trained manner. The officer confirms that the scheme is appropriate use in the Greenbelt and the boundary treatment and replacement storage barn are appropriate associated development. There's no conflict with Greenbelt policy before you today. Again, as stated within the officer's report, the majority of the negotiation during the application process has related to the finer details and the ongoing management of the proposed use to ensure no neighbours are unduly affected. There is a conclusion that there is no conflict with any adopted policies. The applicants agreed to a 12-month time limit condition to allow the authority to monitor and assess the impact of the training facility and the boarding element. A number of other conditions have also been agreed which will limit any potential opportunities for undue noise creation from the site. In addition to the imposition of suitable conditions to allow the LPA control over the use in future, the applicant herself is a vastly experienced, well-respected dog training professional in the Leeds area and has prepared a noise management plan and business plan, which also gives assurances to the authority as to how the site will be managed over at least the next 12 months. Overall, it's clearly demonstrated through the negotiations and the officer's report that the scheme meets all requirements of planning policy and the authority given control over the ongoing use by virtue of the 12-month permission. I'll now hand over to my applicant, who will demonstrate her experience and background to hopefully give you further comfort to members regarding the professional nature of the proposed operation.
When people hear the word kennels, it can sound large scale, but what I'm proposing is the complete opposite. This is a tailored, welfare-led service for my existing clients, offering a calm, structured alternative to large, high-volume kennels. I have over 15 years of professional experience in dog training, working with dogs from puppies through to high-level competition. I trained at Askham Bryan College and hold canine first aid qualifications, so welfare and responsible management are central to everything I do. This is an established business, now being adapted to support a better work-family balance. I'm also a mum to 2 young children, so I'm not looking to run a big operation. This isn't about growth or expansion. It's about providing a manageable, niche service that fits alongside family life. The proposal is low volume, high quality. I board dogs from single household at a time, typically 1 or 2 dogs. It's much closer to home boarding in ethos, simply using kennel space rather than having dogs inside my family home. The training field will also be small scale and controlled. It is not public access and will be only use supervised training or enrichment, not free running. With my background and experience, I understand how to keep dogs calm and settled. Noise is something I take very seriously, and I'm confident in how I manage dogs so they remain calm, settled and well controlled. To reassure everyone further, I operate under a clear set of booking and welfare policies. Everything is booking only, with no drop-ins. I run 1 session at a time with a maximum of 4 dogs per session, and boarding is household only. I also have a trial stay policy, so if a dog couldn't settle, it wouldn't be able to stay overnight. This proposal has been carefully designed to operate responsibly without adverse impact on neighbours, the local environment or wildlife.
If you could please finish your... Oh, you done yet? Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
I've got 3 lines if you want me to say them.
No, it's fine, because you ended on this at the end of a sentence,
That's
so bad timing in that case. Questions to the applicant from members. Councillor Venner first.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 4 questions. I'll do them one at a time. So my first question is just on the context of this application. In the papers that we've received, there's a reference to a previous retrospective planning application. Retrospective planning application suggests you developed this site without planning consent and then had to get it at a later point. Is that correct?
Yeah, the paddock, it was sloping land, so for like the children to play, we raised the land. At the time, we didn't know that we'd have to put the planning in. That's why we got retrospective. Otherwise, we would have applied for the planning in the first instance.
Just before you come back, Councillor Farrar, I'd like to remind members you're here to consider this planning application and not retrospective. If Councillor Farrar, if you'd like to continue.
I get that, but it is part of the context, and I would have thought we can ask a question on anything that's in this paper.
Apologies, Councillor Farrar, but it's important for the public to understand that it is not relevant to the consideration of this application.
Okay. My second question is, how long will dogs be boarding for?
It would be overnight stays. It could be a week stay and 1 overnight stay, but only dogs that could be settled in that environment would be able to stay overnight.
Thank you. My third question is around numbers, because in the paper it says up to the attached condition limits the site to a maximum of 8 dogs. You referred to 1 or 2. So how many dogs will there be on the site, and what will be the usual numbers at any given point in time, sort of average numbers?
The maximum on site at any one time would be 8 dogs, because we could allow up to 4 dogs in a training session and 4 dogs in the boarding area. But typically a lot of households have 1 to 2 pets. They don't. A lot of them don't have 4. That would be the maximum space we can allow for the welfare of the dogs. In a training session, we would only keep to 4 dogs maximum, but I have a lot of one-to-one sessions, so they bring 1 dog for that hour rather than 4. We're just talking on maximum scale would be 8 on site at any one time.
Thank you. My final question is, do you accept the concerns of people opposing this application that very nearby residential properties will be disturbed by barking?
Personally, yes, I do understand why people have a fear of noise coming from dogs. Obviously, dogs have a nature to bark. I have 2 dogs of my own. I wouldn't say they surround the area with barking and people hear them. They are very quiet in nature because they've been trained from a very young age. People who want to bring the dogs training generally because they want to do a bit more of a sport activity with the dogs, or they have a little issue that they want to work on, which I would refer back to my booking policy that before a dog arrived on site, I would know what they were wanting to train with the dogs. If it was a barking issue, we could give them training focuses that they could do at home before they brought a dog to site. So there is, depending on what they were coming for, I would address it, take a personal approach. That would be helped through the booking system. But other than that, I don't see why there'd be a problem.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, so you're saying there could be a maximum of 8 dogs, 4 in the kennels, 4 in the training centre, and there's not going to be a problem with barking?
If a dog was to bark, I would intervene immediately. We would reduce the thing causing the dog to bark. So if it was because they were overexcited, you would reduce the stimulus, refocus the dog, make sure they could offer some attention, give them an easier task to do. I can't say that a dog's never going to bark, but the nature of the activity that I'm encouraging, it's not chasing a ball through the park, it's not free running, it's not get your dog out of the car and just let it jump around being a crazy fool. They've come for an activity, so generally they want to focus the dog, so we have specific games to enable the dog to engage, focus on us, rather than overexcitement play.
I think it's also important for members to note that the dogs are on site with an experienced and professionally trained dog trainer. This is not a dog exercise field where they are free roaming, as we mentioned. Any issues that may occur, the applicant is the best person to prevent additional barking coming from it, even if it does occur once, maybe twice. The nature of the activity being a training facility, clearly this is the perfect person to be able to control that.
Any final follow-ups, Councillor Bennett? Councillor Firth next, please.
Thank you very much indeed. I just want to ask one quick question based on what Councillor Venner was asking about. You mentioned about household-only boarding. Does that mean that in the boarding stables there would only be dogs, out of those 4, there would only be ever dogs from one household? Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely, and that's to reduce the risk of any noise. So we're not mixing a dog from your house and your house. It would be your dogs. Generally, they all know each other, so they would be easier to settle. Like I say, all those dogs would apply the same overnight stay policy. So if they couldn't settle, taking one of them away wouldn't help because they'd be pining for the other. So none of those dogs would stay if they couldn't settle in that environment.
Any follow-up?
Thank you very much indeed. And do you mind me asking then, as a result, obviously this is, you've said that the paddock was levelled, and that was why the retrospective was put in a few years ago, because of the nature of use for children. Could you just elaborate what the current use of these stables are, how long it's been like that, and the current usage of the land?
We have a little Shetland pony called Hope, and she's the only one out of my dog. I've got 2 dogs and the pony. She's the one that is allowed to free run around the field. The dogs they're not allowed unsupervised access in the field. The children play on, they've got electric cars, little electric quads, Hazel just got a bike for her birthday, so she's been learning to ride a bike in the field. It's generally split between garden and pony play at the minute. It's been like that for 2 years, and we moved there 3 years ago. It was in the actual field. Why we raised the levels is because there was 4 horses grazed on there before we bought the property for like 20 years, and the ground was taken to like pure soil mud. There weren't any nutrients for grass to grow. So that was also part of the initial why we raised the land, is because the soil would have had to be scraped and resoiled, I suppose, to enable some grass to grow through. That was part of the retrospective.
Again, I just need to guide members that the retrospective is not relevant to this application. Any follow-up, please, Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't actually referencing that. It was just asking what the current use of the land is. Can I just ask a result? How does your business currently operate, given that you don't have a facility close to your property? Do you have a facility elsewhere that you use? And also on top of that, just on the side, what's going to happen to Hope the horse?
Hope will definitely be remaining on site, but she can also use the area too, because it's going to remain as grass, so we can definitely ride the pony round on there. I rent a barn area that I do my training sessions, so I work a couple of evenings a week. Like I said, I am a mother to 2 young children. I want to make the balance more appropriate for myself and my children, so the current venue I use, I train till 9 at night. I don't want to train till 9 at night. I have 2 young children. If I can work and have the children at home, only working up till 7. And like I say, when it said the winter hours, that was because I'm not going to be working up till 7 in the winter hours. It would be in summer. I forgot your question now, but does that cover?
You've answered my question, thank you. Or you've certainly provided an answer, thank you.
Oh, we're reassured about the pony. Councillor Stables.
Thank you. I think you've part answered it already, but you mentioned earlier, or your agent did, about that you had a noise management plan. I wondered if you could just outline that for us, please.
The noise management plan is on the public website. I mean, it's at least 2 pages long. Do you want us to read all of it, or do you want? How would you like us to address it? It broadly reflects the conditions that are in the officer's report.
Sorry, can you just give us a summary, sort of key points, please?
So the bullet points on the noise management plan relate to the hours of operation, numbers of dogs on site at once, which we've already discussed, numbers of dogs in the training field at once, the careful dog selection, which was through the booking process that the applicant mentioned, and then the structure of the training, as we previously mentioned, to ensure that any stimulus is taken away if that is perceived to be becoming an issue.
Yep, thank you. So I just want to, I'm just kind of addressing the noise issue really. So if you had a dog came along which was noisy and you're struggling to prevent that noise, what would your response be to that?
I want to go in the training side, but I suppose you don't really want to know about the training side. Making sure that the dog was prepared on arrival, so if the handler had a noise like a barking issue in the booking form, they would have to be prepared. They would have the rewards out ready for the dog. We would, as soon as they came out of the car or arrived on site, the dog would always be on lead. You'd be working to control the dog, keeping them under arousal, so taking any stimulus, anything exciting away, making sure that their dog could offer us some focus, giving them simple tasks to do in order to focus on the handler. Arrivals would be staggered, they'd be controlled. Dogs, like I say, would always be on lead. We'd focus on engaging the dog straight away, generally because the expertise area that I work in is agility. So I'm not saying it's not an issue, but we will be focusing on training the dog to work. So if that was a specific issue, people would have notified about that. The dogs are there to work and they are there to train. So we would already have like proprietary work beforehand, before they arrived on site, because if someone paid for an hour of my time and we spent 20 minutes trying to get the dog to be quiet, that would be a waste of time. So that is not how it would work. We would put things in place, simple focus games from the dog at home. We'd practice beforehand before they arrived on site. The structured sessions, there would be enrichment throughout. There's no free running. I suppose that people would refer it back to an exercise field, but it is not an exercise field in the sense of dogs running, chasing a ball, barking with the other dogs that are with them. It's total opposite what we would want from our dogs in a training session.
I've got Councillor Rowntree next.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions, please, about the how your sessions will operate, just to make sure we can understand that. You have explained you're experienced in this field and well qualified. Is the business, or the proposed business, is it a one-woman band? Will you be leading all the sessions yourself?
Yeah, it's just me. The venue that we use at the minute, there's only so many places where you can train dogs, so there isn't really anywhere else to take the business. I would like to expand the business into the dog boarding, because at the minute it's mainly the training sessions that I do. Again, they would be working alongside each other, so they would complement each other that way, but it would be just me.
Okay, thank you. Now, the permitted hours that you're seeking, it's 9 a.m. to 7 p.m, that's correct, isn't it? Is it 6 days a week?
It was 7 days a week on the plan.
Sorry, 7 days a week. Now, if you're allowed to, and obviously you're not, from what you've already told us, you're not going to be using all of that time. Could you give an estimate of how much of the time there will be activity in the arena, if we can call it that?
Yeah, that's fine. So currently I work in 3-hour blocks at the venue I'm at now. So 10 while 11, 11:15 while 12:15, 12:30 while 1:30, and then I go home, like have a packet of crisps and then go pick my kids up from school. And then I'm with the kids all day. So then certain times I would then have someone to look after my children. I would then work 3 hours on the evening. So I can actually only fit so many working hours in a day. But it would be, the 15-minute intervals would help, but it wouldn't be for 6 long hours jam-packed in a day.
Okay, would you like to try and put a figure on it? I appreciate this is approximate, but are we saying 12 hours a week or more or less, or what?
Would be like, I'd like to be the minimum 3 hours a week. No, a day, 3 hours a day. For the week. That would be like the scale.
Any follow-up, Councillor?
Okay, so that would be 3 hours, presumably not 3 hours, 7 days.
Yeah, so obviously if I can work up to 6 sessions, that would be great. Like I said, I'm a single mum to 2 young children. I need to be able to support my children, my family life. If I only have a customer to work 1 hour that day, it'll be 1 hour. If I can work up to 6, that would be great.
Okay, thanks. Finally, I'm just thinking, if when we talked about dogs obviously being excited by each other and you get a festival of barking, just thinking if some sort of disorder breaks out in the training session, you're on the spot. And sort of an experienced dog trainer, you can handle it. If I'm just thinking, say, if it kicks off in the kennels and you're in the arena training the dogs, then you've got distance to cover. And how would you handle that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So another bonus of just having 4 dogs in a training session at a time, they are all with their people who brought them. So if there's 4 dogs, there's 4 people, and then me as a trainer. We say beds, but the boundary that we would give them, so you would set up a chair and a bed next to your chair, they would all be like 1 metre to 2 metres apart. So there would be no reason that the dogs don't come in close proximity to each other. Again, the nature of training, we want to be able to be happy with another dog close by, but to completely ignore them. For agility competitions, you do not want your dog interacting with any other dog, because if your dog wants to go run to see another dog and you've paid to do a competition, like you're eliminated. Like that's not what we're there. We're training dogs to ignore each other essentially. So the more distance we give them, the better. But you're talking, they wouldn't really come in any closer proximity than 1 metre to 2 metres from each other.
Any follow-up?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. And I think just to, again, just to advise members, as much of the information on potential hours, we're not here to discuss what ifs. We're here to consider the application based on the hours that's been applied for. Councillor Gavani next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Move on to the lighting. It says in one point that it's security and work lights, but you've said you wouldn't be working through into the darker hours of winter months. So is the lighting for work, for security? How often will the lights be on?
The lights would be on whilst I was working, so they wouldn't be on if I weren't working. We have security lights at the minute, either on the stables or like the stables or the end of the garage. So for if the intruder normally catches the dogs, like if they're out in front of the stables, I'd say. The lighting plan.
The conditions will agree the final specification of the lighting, which, as you said, will be on during training sessions, but then it will be on a manual switch to be able to switch it off as soon as training sessions are over. It won't be times from the 9 AM to the 7 PM. It will be a manual switch to turn off as soon as the training session's over.
So they wouldn't be on into the dark of the evening, whether that be summer or winter?
Only when there is a training session on. If there's a training session that's a 6 till 7 training session, they may well be on, but as you said, it's the joys of being self-employed. It's an on-demand service, so if there's nobody booked in past 5 PM, the lights will be off at 5 PM. So.
Any further questions? Councillor Parnham next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I wasn't able to come today for the site visit, but a couple of quick questions. Are the proposed kennels going to be enclosed or are they open to the elements? That's the first question.
So the internal one in the garage, they are roof, sides, everything. It's a garage door at the minute, but it would obviously be converted internally. The proposed kennels for outside in the stable, that's more of a day run style, so it would be not open front. I suppose it's not going to be fully secure, plus it's going to be in wooden, but they're for a day run, so that they're not for the overnight boarding. No, it's more day run style, but again, while someone's supervised on site. So say I was out riding the pony, they could be in there. So they have because the license, the dogs need to have so many hours of daylight exercise area, so that would allow for that.
Okay, so the ones staying overnight are going to be enclosed?
Yes.
Right, like in a house, so to
yeah.
speak. Right, okay. I mean, my brother, you can't cancel. I know you can't cancel sound entirely. My brother's got 8 rescue dogs, and it's when I arrive, it's pandemonium. But yeah, for me, it's the sound. You understand the concern of the resident, but I also understand you want to run a business, which is great. What about this idea of moving the fences? Do you think that's a possibility that you'd be able to still run? And secondly, I appreciate you've got a family and you've got a lot of commitments. The residents are going to be dead keen to make sure that these opening times are there. You know, if someone's coming 10 minutes later, they're going to be on your case. Are you feel quite comfortable about running a business with those limitations in place long term?
The sessions I do at the minute, like it's back to back. So a session finishes within the hour, so that gives them time to then get the dog in the car, go. I know that we've got to account for new people, but the session it's as follows. So you finish 5 minutes before the session is up. Then there's 15 minutes for those to go, next people to arrive. they start within the hour. If they're late, then it's their problem, I'm afraid. They wouldn't get longer because then it would interfere with everyone else's session time. So you've got to be quite firm on that one. And then, you asked me something else, apart from the fence. Was it the fence?
Would you be able to move the fence and still be financially viable?
So in terms of the fence, as the officers put in paragraph 60, the applicant would be able to put a 2-metre fence right on the boundary without needing consent under permitted development. The reason we brought it away from the fence is because of the levels that inherently lowers the visual impact for the neighbours. It is inherently a balance between the visual impact for the neighbours of having a fence closer up to their boundary versus the height from within the site. The addition of the landscaping within the fenced area naturally softens any potential noise that's there. So you have the benefit of the landscape noise attenuation and then the fence behind that. If the neighbours wanted a 2.4 metre fence closer to their boundary, then we could consider it, but that's hence the reason why we've located it 7 metres away from the boundary, is because of those levels differences.
Sorry to answer the question as well about the visiting your brother. The people arriving on site for the training sessions wouldn't have any interaction with the dogs in the kennel area, so that would be, it would have roof lighting, but they wouldn't be seeing each other through windows and doors, so they're not going to cross paths. The training people would come bring their dogs. If I knew there was a session 11 while 12, the homeboarding dogs wouldn't be in the run. This to eliminate any crossover like that, and just keep dogs happy as well. So if your person goes on holiday and they're sat with a stranger dog next door, it just adds stress to the situation. I'm trying to offer a service that I do not see is out there, and it keeps all the dogs happy. There's no added extra stress to their person leaving them. It is going to be a homeboarding style, but not in my family home, just to the side of my family home, but with more the homeboarding character rather than a kennel character feel that we suppose we get the idea from lots of dogs in a row of metal crates next to each other. It won't be that.
Any follow-up, Councillor? I just think for members' benefit, on the screen, that is actually the proposed elevations of the new outbuildings, not the existing, but that's basically a proposal of what it would be if permission was granted. Councillor Firth.
Thank you very much indeed. Just 2 questions. The first one is, you mentioned about the particular competition training that you've been doing at the moment. Could you just elaborate a bit more on what the actual training is, and whether it's dogs that have no training at all, or whether it's the vast majority of the business, as you mentioned, is to do with competitions? And the second point is, there has been concerns raised by the objectors in relation to the acoustic fencing that you've cited. Can you explain how you came to the particular proposal for that height and also the type of fencing that you're coming with, given the concerns that have been raised?
So for the training, I currently do puppy classes, so the venue is 6 dogs in a session, so obviously that would be cut to 4, so it'd be 4 dogs in a group session. In order for your dog to participate in a group class, they have to be okay in a close proximity to other dogs. So if you said, my dog's reactive and they don't like other dogs, they are not in a group class situation. They come for one-to-ones. You are given homework, tasks, games to play with your dog. So then you practice at home, you take that out and about and try and get your dogs used to that in more of a freestyle environment rather than a forced group environment. So group dogs are all within close proximity, so they have to be dog friendly. For the puppy dogs, they're just learning all new things. So generally, overall, puppy classes are quieter anyway. And the agility, they have a variety of group classes and one-to-ones, depending on what the handlers are wanting to work on. But again, group classes, if your dog's going to competition, they are not bothered around other dogs around them. You can go to a dog agility competition, there are 200 dogs on site. don't really care about other dogs next to them. They are focused on the task in hand. They're doing their agility. It's cruffs, so when they're going through tunnels, over A-frame, jumping over fences, it's that style. When you watch cruffs, apart from the charity dog show that part they put on, those competition dogs are fully focused, concentrating on the handler in the zone.
In terms of the height of the fence, it's similar to my point that I made before. It's a balance of outlook for neighbours and the benefit of any additional height and the additional noise attenuation that makes. The balance being, obviously, we could propose a 3 metre fence and have additional noise attenuation if needed. The balance was that a 2.4 metre fence is judged to be an appropriate height visually, knowing that the standard of training that they're getting and the landscaping buffer in front of it as a combination should be enough to appease any members.
Thank you for both of your answers there. I was actually asking in terms of there was concerns not about the height, although that has been raised. The concerns were actually about the specification of the fence. So I just wondered if you had any further comments to either come back to that particular point that's been raised.
The specification will be a custom-made panel for noise attenuation, so you can buy noise attenuating fences. It won't be a traditional slatted board fence. It will be, however, it comes from the manufacturer because they are manufactured in individual panels.
Any follow-up? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask about the noise issue again. I just wanted to say your skill and experience does really come across. I think you're answering our questions really well, and your very detailed responses about the nature of your work and training dogs and the focus on, you know, good behaviour. But you have got these acoustic panels. If the work's so focused on, you know, dogs not interacting with each other in a barky way, not coming in being overexcited, why do you need the acoustic panels? It feels as though that is an acknowledgement that it is a noisy business and therefore you need acoustic panels. So would you be able to comment on that?
It's just a fail-safe, and my 3 lines in my end of my opening was committed to being a respectful neighbour, and my intention is to run a small, controlled, family-run service whilst preserving the greenbelt character of the family home. It's a fail-safe for me to keep my neighbours happy around me, because I would like to be a long-term neighbour. I'd like my children to grow up there. Being able to work from there means I can assure that for them. The fencing is a fail-safe for the neighbours, really, and myself, just to make sure that I'm keeping everybody happy.
Any follow-up? Any other questions, members? Thank you very much for your time in answering those questions. If you'd like to return back to the public gallery. It's now time for questions to the officers. So questions to the officers, anyone? Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, I've got 3 questions. So my first question is, could you talk through the condition of a 12-month trial? Would that mean it could be stopped if there was a problem, for example, with barking? How does the trial work, like in some detail? Like, what measures do you use to determine if the business is having an adverse impact or if it's successful? That's my first question, and then I've got 2 more.
Yeah, I can run through that. Basically, it's again a balance which I suppose we have adopted on other schemes, and the process of that would be that time frame is considered acceptable by officers to allow sufficient monitoring, but then if there is an issue, it would then, after the 12-month period, be up to officers, or if we do return back to members, to either not grant the permission. They would basically have to obviously apply for permanent permission after the 12 months. So within that 12-month time frame, if we receive complaints to ourselves in terms of planning or environmental health in terms of noise complaints, they are logged. We can judge the number, the nature of those complaints, and then make an assessment at that time, basically. So if there were significant issues surrounding that, a judgment could be made, hence the officer view that adding that condition and the applicant's agreement to the 12-month is a balance between obviously allowing the consent or allowing a period of monitoring at that time.
My second question, I'm sorry I wasn't on the site visit because I'm sure you will have covered this on the site visit. Could you comment on the distance of the lighting to the properties and how will they not shine into people's homes?
Yeah, I'll just chat through. I'll just bring the plan up, Councillor Venner, the proposed one. So again, in essence, we are looking to control that by way of condition, and we can, within the condition, we haven't put specific details on the actual report, but we could do that pre-commencement before the actual use starts. And the locations of the lighting are indicated by these post arrangements here. And obviously just indicatively, as you'll see, the lighting faces inwards to the site, and the lighting survey and specification condition is aimed at securing details, again with consultation with environmental health and other consultees about how the lighting survey will be viewed. We can ask for details about how the lighting spill is shown, and obviously measures to the lights, physical measures about shielding and shielded floodlights to prevent lighting going in the other direction to the houses on Valley Road or Whitecoat Lane to the side as well.
Thank you. My third question is, so there were 56 letters opposing the application, and obviously we've heard from objectors, but it also says in the report that there were 37 letters of support. I haven't sat on a plans panel for a while, so I was wondering, that sounds like quite a high level of support to me. I was wondering if you could comment on, is it unusual to get that many letters of support for an application? Are any of the letters of support from the immediate local community? And what reasons did people give? I know there's a summary in the report, but if you could say a bit more about what reasons people gave in support of this.
Yes, certainly. So I suppose I would say it's slightly unusual, yes, that there are, and it's acknowledged by officers, there are quite a lot of out of locality, both objectors and supporters of the scheme. The support letters surround support on the basis that it is a small independent business, and that the use is something that the people who have written in support would obviously use, hence the letters of support. So yeah, it is acknowledged that the main concerns and the main way from officers' point of view that was attributed to the assessment was the surrounding objections from the immediate neighbours. But yeah, the letters of support in summary basically offer support for small independent business. They outline that there's no similar dog boarding or training classes within the vicinity, so hence why they're acting in support of the application. That's broadly what they are summarising.
Can I just come back? Are any of the letters of support from the immediate environment?
There were some in the locality of letters of support. Yeah, I don't know the specific number off the top of my head, but there were, and like I said, the majority of the comments which sort of form both the objections and the letters of support, some of those were out of locality as well, yeah.
Any more, Councillor Venner? Councillor Stables next.
Sorry, you threw me there. You said Councillor Stables and you were looking that way, so I was just checking that you meant me.
Multitasking.
I was like, okay, sorry. Apologies. So, a couple of questions. So, whilst we've got this up, I'll ask that one first. So, about the lighting, I'm just trying to, I can't read it very well from this no, not even looking at that one. I can't read it well enough. So, the inner line you've got there, is that, so can you highlight where the fence is, please, on there?
Yes, certainly. So the outer line on the plan there is actually the site boundary. So the lighting will be close to the site boundary itself, but facing inwards, like I said, and the actual inner line is the acoustic fencing and the planting buffer. So I think, as the applicant referred to, they have designed this to set in the acoustic fencing from the site perimeter. So the site perimeter is the wider line, and the inner red dotted speck is the acoustic fencing and planting.
Thank you. And can you just explain, have you got a picture or anything of what these lights would look like?
No, not at this stage, but what we would be doing is obviously attaching that condition and lighting survey, so that survey would need to inform the specific type of light, the obviously dimensions, height, etc., and how they would operate and mitigate obviously lighting issues, and we would then assess it at that stage.
How high currently do you think these lights are going to be, and will they be above, how far above the wall that the neighbours will be looking out on? Will these lights appear?
The lighting specification on here is for 2.5 metres, and the acoustic fencing is for 2.4 metres. So obviously the lights are slightly higher to shine into the dog training arena. And the levels, if I just show you, I mean that's just a broad overview of the site levels, but if I show you the photos, we've tried to consider the changing levels, and I think we touched on this on site. If you look at the changing levels across the site, the photo on the left there, this is obviously the lower area below the paddock. There's I would say approximately sort of 1.5 metres to there, and probably 2 metres to the top of the post and rail fence, and then up above that is the embankment below the houses on Valley Gardens, and then the boundary walls on the houses of Valley Gardens. So broadly, officers' view is basically that the 2.5 metre height lighting and fencing would be at a similar level to the boundary wall on the properties of Valley Road. So if you take it from the ground level here on this photo, that where you stood at the bottom, I mean there is a balance to be had there. That's the total height from the bottom here, but if there are lights to be installed up at this level as well, so the lights at this level would be broadly the same, and the lights which are to be installed further up, they would obviously be 2.5 metres as well, so they would be higher, but again shining into the site, so that's just to provide clarity on that.
So just to clarify, sorry, no, go on.
I just wanted to help you slightly, Councillor Stables, obviously because there is an embankment there, although the fence and the heights on that boundary to Valley Road seem similar, there is nearly a metre up, step up. So obviously to the area where the dogs would be, it is the lighting columns that, although they're onto the boundary with the residential properties, would be around 2.5, to the field where the dogs would be exercised, it's effectively 3.5, because we all know that obviously the higher they are, the less light the spread there is shining down. So that's the intention, I think, with what's been put there. And on the northern side, they're pretty much the same level as the field in terms of the true height of being 2.5.
So what I was trying to get to was from a neighbour's perspective what they would see. So if it's the same height as the wall, then they're not going to see very much. That's where I'm getting to. When the residents are looking down on the site, they've already got a wall there above the embankment. If the lighting, I'm asking, is it going to be, you know, way above that and sort of, so it'll be very visible, or is it in that line where the wall is, where they wouldn't really be able to see the back of the lighting?
Again, it's a balance, and you are right in what you're saying, that obviously from this level here, it would be basically the same height as I think Steve alluded to, and then further up where there is the acoustic fencing, further in the paddock towards the houses on Valley Road but set in, that's obviously going to be 2.4 metres. But if you take the embankment height and the wall height, it would broadly be similar, but you would potentially have some height where the fence is higher than those walls, but not significantly. And one of the wider considerations about that surrounding the assessment as well is that there would be little stopping the applicant erecting some fencing to their boundary anyway, or likewise to the properties on Valley Road or Whitecoat Lane. So that, in essence, the people may not require permission to actually put their own fences up at the back as well, which wouldn't factor into the assessment. So there's a balance between the impact visually, the changing levels, and obviously that fallback position as well.
And the lights are going to be baffled so that the light direction is all down into the arena, if you want to call it that, the dog exercise area, and will there be any spill into the properties behind?
That would be the intention, and obviously as part of the lighting survey, usually there's a specification providing either a mapping or a forecast of where the lighting would spill, and obviously then if that's indicated on those plans through the condition discharge that it's going to impact those gardens, that's something at that stage we would say, well, you know, this needs amending or further mitigations required to the lighting to stop an harmful impact upon amenity, yes.
Thank you, and apologies, there was one second question, sorry, that's taken a long time, but I hope that's helpful in terms of understanding about the lighting. Yes.
Sorry, because I think that was a very long, detailed explanation, but I think the crux of the question is, and just for people watching this, are the lighting columns going to be sticking above the height of the boundary wall? I get the overall heights, but the question is there going to be any height above the boundary wall?
In short, the answer is yes, there will be at the top of the site up here, and then where we stood here at the bottom, it would be broadly level, yeah.
So by roughly how much?
If we take the height of this paddock here and look at the...
So not the height of the paddock, the height of it against the abutting boundary wall.
I would consider if we take it from the height of... Sorry, yeah, I know what you're saying, Chair, but just for my own... from where the paddock is and in relation to that boundary wall there, it would be in essence something like a metre higher, the lighting, something like that.
I think that clarifies the question you were trying to get to, yes. You gave me a really detailed answer, but just think for clarity. Yes, so we've got Councillor Stables.
Thank you very much, that's exactly where I was going. The other one was about the noise attenuating fence. Is there... we've heard from the agent that they're going to use special noise attenuating panels. Is there any research around that in terms of how effective that is?
I'll probably defer to Simon on that piece. Obviously, I contacted Environmental Health, so he might be able to provide some info on that. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Acoustic fences are different to what you'd see as a garden fence. What we typically seek is for continuous, no gaps, and a density of panel, sort of 12 kilograms per metre square or greater than that. The sort of fences you see along motorways, they're acoustic grade, so they're manufactured to a certain specification, but you can get all sorts of different wonderful types of panels made of metal. You can get ones with willow woven into it, so you can get aesthetic improvements as well. But yeah, the specification would have to be a part of a condition discharge that I would then check off. So yeah, it would be of a specification that would attenuate sound rather than just look like a fence.
Thank you. Can you give any more clarity on that in terms of, is there any research that says, okay, if you put this fencing up, it will reduce sound by 50%? Is there any kind of specifics on it?
I can give you some rule of thumb. So if you can block line of sight to the noise source from the receiver, so if you've got your noise source down here and you've got your barrier and you're stood on the other side and you basically obscure line of sight, you get about 10 dB reduction as a rule of thumb. So that's how you sort of basically you need to position a barrier between the source and the receiver so that the sound can't deflect around it. So that's why you need certain heights, and that has to be, site specific.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to understand this. So, did you say 10 dB? I'm not sure what that is, and it is decibels. Okay, and is there a percentage that you can say this will reduce? Is my first bit of the question. My second bit is, given where this fence is and the height of it and the angle up to the houses, how effective do you think it would actually be?
So, okay, so sorry to get too technical, it's hard. I don't generally work in percentages of reduction because it's relative to the actual overall sound that you're looking to attenuate. So 10 decibels is basically, in terms of loudness, if I reduce something by 10 decibels, that would sound half as loud. So it's a substantial reduction. Obviously dog barks are generally quite loud, so you'd be making a loud sound a bit less loud, so it's not going to make it silent, but it's a significant reduction in performance if it's positioned right and it's of the right specification. So that's, yeah, I would expect at least 10 decibel reduction based on the position of this barrier to the residential properties.
Just to help the general debate, a question to Simon. Would it be fair to say that having the fence closer to the actual sound source attenuates it better than being put further away? I asked that obviously for that simple question, but also there was discussion about moving the fence further away, and really it ought to be close to the dogs. Is that fair?
So it's better to have the barrier either close to the source or close to the receiver to maximise that effect of the barrier. If you have it in the middle, you reduce the effectiveness because the pathway of the sound is reduced. So to maximise that pathway distance, which is your reduction, it either has to be close to the source or close to the receiver. Either or is the same in terms of performance.
Yeah, so based on where it is, your view on this particular case, how effective do you think it is? Will it actually reduce it by 10 decibels?
So, I mean, the options are kind of limited in terms of where it goes. Where it's positioned now is as good as I would expect in terms of performance-wise. The alternative is to place it right up against neighbouring up the boundaries, which brings other problems, doesn't it? Really, with the sort of visual aspect. So it has to be, a practical balance, really, what's achievable. But I think. Aside from the barrier, the sort of management controls are really key to this preventing barking being an issue, and obviously with the 12-month temporary permission, that gives us a period to monitor how that works in practice. I've investigated numerous complaints about dogs in the past, and I know of many that operate without causing problems. So it's very much, it's like a lot of businesses like nightclubs and that, they're capable of making noise, but if they're well managed, they don't create problems. But obviously we have that safety net of our nuisance powers in the Environmental Protection Act if things aren't managed well and it causes problems.
Just moving on to Whitecoat Lane itself and traffic access. I know, obviously, there's been a reference to impact on highway safety. When the plans were being discussed, did officers, when they spoke to the applicant, did they have an idea about the number of vehicles at any one site? And my second question is, apologies I wasn't able to go today because I was dealing with the residents' welfare, but how many vehicles can actually be accommodated on site?
Given that the training facility will accommodate 4 dogs at a time, we've assumed a worst case scenario that each of those dogs will come in their own vehicle.
Okay, there's enough room for all 4?
Yeah, there's 4 parking spaces on site.
I'm assuming that's 4 dogs and 4 people and they're not driving themselves. Any follow-up, Councillor Parnham? Councillor Anderson.
A couple of questions. One is this, we keep talking about the green belt here. Is this green belt or is this redefined now as grey belt, this site? That's question number 1.
It is green belt, Councillor.
Definitely green belt.
Green belt,
There's no way any planning appeal and planning inspector will turn around and say that this is not valuable green space or green belt and that it can be redefined as grey belt.
It's currently within the green belt, and then obviously it forms part of the residential curtilage of that property.
But your policy colleagues have now told us that the majority of this city will have to be reclassified as grey belt. We've lost a number of planning applications in other parts of the city because the inspectors are now defining it as grey belt. Are we sure we're on? If you give me the assurance that you're on solid ground, then fine, I'll accept that.
I would be confident that this basically still constitutes green belt. I say that because of the point I was mentioning. The applicant owns it. It's residential garden, so it's not like a site which is undeveloped in the wider green belt, which could come forward as like a housing allocation, or it's basically residential curtilage.
The other thing is, by listening to the comments that are being made, I think there's and I've been racking my brains in all the years I've been working on planning. It's very difficult to come up with any reasons for refusal, because I can't see, much as there might be concerns, and I'm not disputing that there are concerns, but it's what we would hang our hat on. And we know from the first paper we took that when we sometimes come up with reasons to ignore, because again, the training that we get is that we're told to accept officers' recommendations unless we have a very good planning reason. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what good planning reason can I come up with? Much as I share the concerns being raised, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you've not got valid concerns, but it's how do I make a planning argument out of this? I mean, I'm needing help, because I can't honestly. This is maybe over to Mr. Butler to give me some help and support in this one.
I just love these moments. I mean, the starting point, apart from the development plan and all the policies and all the rest of it, actually, from a development management point of view, is obviously we are looking to facilitate development, i.e. to approve applications. It's not the other way around. But you're right in what you're saying. The reason that the officers have brought forward a recommendation for approval is we don't think that this is really as sustainable as a refusal. But we're starting from a different point to your question, because we are saying that we should be approving things. And any development is that. So we're not looking, every time an application comes in, we're not looking for a reason to refuse it. We're looking at what they've got to make sure it can be approved, but be acceptable in that approval. Okay.
What I'm getting at is that if I was minded to suggest that we should refuse this, and you were to well, it's usually the legal advisor that says to me, on what grounds, Councillor Anderson, are you wanting to refuse it? What I'm saying is I don't think there are. It's just try and bring some end to the conversation, because that's why I'm after more than anything else, because if we could split the rest of the afternoon on it. But if we've got no reasons, valid reasons for refusal, is there anything we can do? That's what I'm trying to find.
Well, we would say it's simply not bringing forward a recommendation for approval. The answer to that is no, obviously, because that's why we are recommending approval to the plans panel. Yeah, I understand your frustration, because I was joking earlier. We're giving this a good chewing, but and then I was told I was barking up the wrong tree. But we start from the starting point is that we're looking for reasons to approve things. This application has been considered thoroughly. We consider we've brought all the relevant considerations towards members to discuss, and it has been given a thorough debate today. But if you were to do, sometimes it doesn't work. Look at the very first application that was on here. That was an application that was brought forward to members for an approval. It went to the inspectorate because members overturned it to a refusal. The inspectorate overturned the members' decision ultimately and made it an approval. It's that kind of situation they have here. Otherwise, we wouldn't bring forward an approval.
Councillor Venner.
I'm not suggesting this, I'm just asking the question. If we decided the barking was a significant problem, is noise nuisance not a... I know it's not called noise nuisance. Isn't there like a... I can't remember isn't there a planning term that would fit under? That's my first question. My second question is to you. I just wanted to ask you to expand on a point you made earlier. You said you have worked with facilities like this where it hasn't been a problem in terms of noise nuisance in relation to dogs. So yeah, those are my questions.
I will leave it, Simon. But yeah, I just to touch on that, it's basically bound by, I suppose, both sets of legislation in terms of what we're considering. The 12-month temporary condition. So that would, like I said previously, that would allow us from the planning side to obviously monitor it, and then obviously I think Simon will come in. The development as it moves forward, even if it's permanent in the future or what have you, that would be bound by sound. Environmental health legislation. If there are impacts there, it would be under separate legislation.
Sorry, Simon. And before Simon just jumps in, because I'm sure he can do this articulate better than I think the gist of this is that, as Mike's just said, it's a 12-month temporary permission. It's to test out whether it actually does cause nuisance, because dogs barking at different levels, different sized dogs, different temperaments, different decibel ratings. one thing I would say here is that we think that the applicant, with her experience of operating this kind of thing, and also the mitigation measures that are being put in, and that's in the whole round. So it's not only the fences, it's the way they intend to operate in limiting the numbers, how many can actually be on that field at a particular time, the kind of training that it's going to be, the dogs will be involved in, and ultimately car parking and all the rest of it. I don't think the dogs will be driving there themselves, to be quite honest with you. I think that's just a bit stretched too far. I know they're going to be trained really well, but I think it's in the round. You have to look at all the mitigation measures that have been put forward and considered by the applicant and by the officers. And this is why it's brought forward as a recommendation for approval. And if you want to add anything, Simon, please do.
I was just going to sort of mention about the planning process in terms of mitigating adverse impacts and avoiding significant adverse impacts. And what my opinion is that those have been met by the management plan, the acoustic fence, all those measures, if implemented. If they still cause a problem, we have our fallback of nuisance legislation. But yeah, our purpose at planning stage is to sort of see off those sort of potential impacts through mitigation, so it meets those tests.
Councillor Gavani.
Thanks, Chair. Going back to the acoustic fence, at the moment on that western side we've got a 2 metre 40 acoustic fence approximately 7 metres in from the property boundary line. If you actually put a 1 metre 40 acoustic fence on the property line, so it's still 240 then above the paddock level, would that be more effective because it's closer to the person? As you said, acoustic fences work better if they're close to the source or close to the destination. Would that be better? And that, obviously, that 1 metre 40 fence on the boundary line is well within the permitted development height. Would that be better?
Only if it obscures the view from the person at that receptor. So if it's only 140, you know, an average head height is about 1.5 metres to 2 metres, depending on how tall you are. Would they still have a line of sight into that training area? I think it probably need to be a bit higher than that. I think probably sighting it closer, taking advantage of the dropping ground heights, is a more effective way of doing it. And obviously, you know, it's not cheap to have acoustic barriers. Probably 150 pounds a metre length. So yeah, so I think that's probably the most efficient way of doing it.
And the reason I say that then is you could actually sight the floodlighting that's on that side, rather than being on the top of the bank, sighted to the bottom of the bank, so it's actually in the paddock, and you've got no light spillage going backwards. So I think possibly cure two things there.
Yeah, I take that point, Councillor Garner, but I think again it's similar to the point we've mentioned about assessing what's been submitted. I mean, we could ask the applicant to move the lighting inwards, but what we would achieve by the condition and the requirements I touched on earlier is obviously those lights which are shown near the boundary in any event will be assessed for light spill and impacts anyway. So moving them, I get your point about moving them, but they would then still need to be assessed even if they're moved. So I think it's just assessing what the applicant's put in, really. I mean, we consider that okay, subject to the condition, I suppose, is the answer from an officer perspective.
Just some quick clarifications from me. So just to be clear, as it stands now, the applicant could put a fence right against the boundary under permitted development up to a certain height. That's question number one. And actually, therefore, a decision has been made that this is much more optimum, even though actually it would be better if it was actually effectively closer, and they've got the right to do that anyway as it stands. Secondly, there was a comment earlier about, well, this could be 160 people going into the area a day. Are there any restrictions on the number of people that can walk into that area at the moment anyway? And thirdly, we're obviously talking about restrictions on the number of animals that can be on site. Clarification, are there any controls on the number of animals that can be in the adjoining buildings under current legislation?
Yeah, I think we answered the first point about PD, Chair. The restrictions, obviously, the permission doesn't make reference to the number of people, and that is, I suppose, on the basis of what the question is asking, that at present there's no restriction on the number of people within that site. And in answer to your final point, again, outside of the planning boundary application, surrounding dwellings, they could have animals, etc., and there's no restrictions on numbers of animals or what people have as pets, etc. yet.
So therefore, there's no restriction on the number of animals that could be around the site, even though we're talking about the number of restrictions for the animals in site, and that would therefore fall to the normal noise nuisance regime should there be complaints. Is that correct? Could you say us to the mic, sorry?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from members? Comments, please. If I'm sensing no comments, can I ask someone to move the officer recommendation or make an alternative one? Councillor Brooks, is that to move the officer recommendation? Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Rowntree. So we have a proposal for the officer recommendation. Can we just summarise what that officer recommendation is before we go to the vote, please, Steve?
As it stands at the moment, the officer recommendation is as on the papers with no amendments, so it is recommendation approved subject to the conditions as listed.
Are we all clear what we're about to vote on? So can I have a show of hands of all of those in favour of the offer recommendation?
1, 2, 3, that's unanimous.
And for good practice, all those against? Any abstentions? That is carried then. So could you just confirm the result of the vote, please, Steve?
The application is approved subject to the relevant conditions with a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Now, just bearing in mind that was quite a long bit, and I think it was longer than we were expecting, so I'm proposing just a 5-minute quick comfort break for everyone, if that's okay, please. Welcome back, everyone, and to the public watching, if you have stayed. That wasn't quite 5 minutes. We actually had a fire alarm during actually right at the end of the comfort break. So we will crack on and hopefully make up time. Item number 9, 18 Orion Crescent, Belle Isle, Leeds, LS10 3JE. Could I ask the officer to present the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. The specific application relates to a planning application at 18 Orion Crescent, which is for a change of use from a single family dwelling, which is known as a C3 use, to a children's residential home known as a C2 use. The proposed care home... No plans.
Yeah, downstairs. Are you getting the... Yeah.
The proposed care home will provide 24-hour residential care for a maximum of 2 children between the ages of 7 and 18. The care itself will be provided by a maximum of 3 members of staff, which consists of 1 team leader and 2 support staff. There will be 2 shift changes throughout the day, one at 8 a.m. and the other at 10 p.m. The application was brought to panel by the request of Councillor Dixon, who raised concerns on potential impacts on highway safety, antisocial behaviour, as well as the perceived saturation of care facilities within the Middleton Park ward area, as well as how it may negatively impact community cohesion. Regarding public interest, we received a total of 13 letters of objection to the scheme. The main themes running throughout the objections were that the care home is in an inappropriate area, and there's also concerns surrounding the immunity of neighbours and highway safety. Turning to the application site itself, 18 Orion Crescent is a 2-storey semi-detached property situated within a predominantly residential area, consisting mainly of single-family dwelling homes. The property benefits from a small garden to the front, as we can see on the plans here, and a large long driveway running down the length of the property, and a large garden to the rear. If we zoom out, oh, it's not very well, but here we go. We zoom out to the wider area. Again, mainly single-family dwelling homes, but there is also good transportation links, such as bus stops. There is also a school, and there is also a parade of shops to the immediate rear. We go to the next slide. As we can see from the floor plans, there is no internal changes to the property itself to facilitate this proposed use, and the property will both look and act similar to that as a residential dwelling. So in that way, we do not consider there to be harm to the character of the area. In terms of the general size of the property, the gross internal floor area exceeds the minimum space standards for a 3-bedroom property, with a large garden to the rear, which provides approximately 150 square metres of private amenity space, which is considered sufficient enough to ensure that future children living there will have enough outdoor space. There we go. In terms of noise and disturbance, officers don't believe that the operation of the care home will generate anything more than the traditional family dwelling home. For instance, the movements to and from the site, both by the children residing there and the staff, will be similar to a typical family, including 2 daily shift changes, which can be comparable to those of parents working different shift patterns, e.g. 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. From my report, a notable concern is that the proposed change of use will give rise to antisocial behaviour, but this is considered to be a general assumption, as there is little to no evidence provided to back this up. While this concern is understood, decisions can only be made based on clear and unambiguous evidence. Nevertheless, proactive steps have been taken to try and manage and minimise any future risk, with the provision of a management plan by the applicants, which set out protocols on how complaints will be dealt with or possibly escalated. In addition to both my previous points, parking pressures were cited as an issue. The main
From the photographs above and those who attended site, there is a long driveway. It measures approximately 20 metres. So in accordance with our Transport SPD, that should comfortably accommodate around 3 cars. Also, when consulting with our highways colleagues, they stated no objections to the proposal apart from just general conditions relating to waste and cycle storage, but those can be attached to any subsequent approval. Overall, the council does have a duty under the sector equality duty, which requires us to advance equality and foster good community relationships, particularly where proposals support individuals who are identified as having protected characteristics. In this specific case, that protected characteristic is age. So providing safe, supported accommodation for vulnerable children must be given significant weight, including considerations of the UN's Convention of Rights of the Children, which requires that a child's best interest is a primary consideration. As part of this process, concerns were raised by West Yorkshire Police regarding the wider area's crime levels and potential safeguarding issues. However, officers do note that these concerns are not supported by any clear evidence, which shows the likelihood of children residing within these care homes being involved or falling victim to antisocial behaviour. Therefore, again, while concerns are understood, they are only given very limited weight as there is no evidence to back them up. Other comments call into question the suitability/experience of the care home provider, but under paragraph 37 of the officer's report, it stipulates that the background or experience of the operator is not a material planning consideration, and such checks would be dealt with by the appropriate regulatory body, such as Ofsted, who is responsible for licensing the individuals managing the care home. Therefore, any operational matters or concerns about the provider's suitability falls outside the planning remit. As such, it's considered that the provision of the new children's home would be beneficial and would not lead to an oversaturation in the area. Additionally, with the necessary conditions and management plans secured, there is no concerns regarding residential amenity or highway safety. Therefore, the officers recommend this application for approval as the change of use will cause no harm. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. We do have speakers in opposition to the application. Could I please invite Councillor Dixon to come up to the front, and your 4 minutes begins once you've indicated to the officers.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Plans panel today for listening to me today. Today I'm going to be speaking on behalf of residents who've approached me with their concerns. So from the start, I'd like to just be up. We support children in care. We support high quality, well-regulated residential provision, and looked after children deserve safety, stability, and the very best possible start in their lives. However, this application must be considered within the wider pressures facing children's social care nationally. Councils across the country are struggling with placements efficiency, unregistered providers, and the escalating involvement of private companies with limited oversight. This context matters when assessing whether a proposed home is safe and suitable and appropriate for its location. We, as a political group, have constantly asked this council to support stronger safeguards, including police designing out crime input on all C2 applications, stricter accountability for new providers, and ensuring applicants are accurate and evidence-based. So before addressing the local issues, I want to make a crucial clarification. None of the concerns I raised today imply any wrongdoing by the applicant or by any other individual. This is about suitability of the location, the impact on the community, and whether this environment meets the needs of the vulnerable children. Within half a mile of this address, 2 children's homes are already under development, and within a mile sits the large cherry trees provision. Combined with multiple adult social care facilities nearby, Belial is already carrying more than its fair share of specialist residential settings. A further home risks tipping the balance. Planning should promote mixed, sustainable communities, not concentrated clusters of institutional provision. This community has made its position clear. A local petition signed by 42 residents formally opposes this proposal. On the next street are 2 specialist SEMH schools catering for pupils with significant behavioural, emotional and mental health needs, many of whom have been excluded or are unable to manage in mainstream education. Placing a children's home for vulnerable, looked-after young people so close to 2 high-need SEMH cohorts raises serious safeguarding concerns, including potential conflicts between peer groups, increased risks around exploitation and coercion, difficulty maintaining therapeutic stability for children who may already have trauma histories. This location simply does not provide the protective, low-stimulus environment that many looked-after children need. Residents have reported an antisocial behaviour linked to the property previously used as an Airbnb, combined with the fact that the provider is only registered in September and has no proven track record in children's residential care within tightly packed housing estate. There is understandably anxiety. Parking and road safety issues also remain unresolved, and I hope we can talk a bit more about that later. Orion Crescent already experiences congestion, and staff vehicles will inevitably add pressure. This is a 1930s estate with limited off-street parking and a history of speeding concerns. So, Chair and members of the panel, this is not about us rejecting the children in care. It's about ensuring they receive the right care in the right place with the appropriate level of safeguarding and oversight. And it is about ensuring communities like Belial remain balanced, stable and fair. Given the over-concentration of similar facilities, the proximity to 2 SEMH schools, the safeguarding implications, the petition from local residents and the provider's lack of track record, the history of antisocial behaviour and the unresolved parking and safety issues, I respectfully urge the panel to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Questions to the objector? Councillor Gavani and Councillor Stables.
Thank you, Chair. Most of your objections seem to be around the safeguarding element, which is important, but I think we just heard from the officer that that's not actually a planning consideration. Have you got any genuine, real planning points that in opposition to this?
Of course, I did outline as well about antisocial behaviour and the parking on the street. If you don't mind, I'll go into a bit more detail on that, perhaps, just to clarify. So, as it stands, the plans panel mentioned earlier about 3 cars being able to fit on the driveway. I don't know if anyone's been able to visit the site, but if you park a car outside of the house, you're not getting out of that car. It's very tight. So I'd argue there's probably only room for 2 cars at best. But considering there's a changeover of staff at 8 a.m. and 10 p.m, so there's potentially 3 cars there already. There's also 3 cars to remove out the drive so 3 more can get in. And, and if person at the end of the driveway wants to come out for any reason earlier on, the whole of the cars have got to be pulled out of the driveway to create. So it's going to cause like a bit of mayhem for a short period of time. I admit that's a short period of time. But when you add at 8 a.m. People taking their kids to school, going to work, but also taxis picking up young people to take them to school, in a very tight street, as you can imagine if you visited it, it's not the best to pass at any time really, especially at 8 a.m. when there's quite a lot of cars on the street, and at 10 p.m. when everyone's home from work. It adds a significant amount of traffic and a lot of disturbance for residents. And furthermore, to talking about antisocial behaviour, around the corner there's a shopping, a handful of shops, opposite the schools, what I've mentioned earlier. There is 2 schools. I know it says on the plan there was 1, but actually the South Leeds Youth Hub is actually hired by by one of these schools, and it's actually situated in there during the day. So there's actually 2 of those schools side by side already, which often causes its own challenges, especially when young people are hanging about after school. But on an evening and a weekend, there's often young people hanging around on e-bikes, motorbikes and quads at those shops, causing lots of trouble, and hence why you've probably got a pushback from the police on it, is because it's a significant challenge for us to try and address those issues for residents who are already seeing a massive impact of antisocial behaviour in that nearby area. And a lot of it, I mean, from intelligence from police, is drug related as well. So it adds to those safeguarding concerns I've outlined earlier, that if we've got 2 vulnerable young people in this house, it is really quite worrying how they're protected, and I think we should all bear that in mind. I know it's a bit of a moral one, and it's hard to balance moral versus planning rules, but I think the ASB and the potential for the parking issues are warranting us to reconsider this application.
Follow up?
Yes, please. If this was a family home with a couple of adults both working, potentially an older child who also had a car, surely those problems would exist anyway with parking. So there'd be this is actually no worse than if it was a family home.
I hear what you're saying, but that totally discounts the changeovers at 8 a.m. and 10 p.m, for example, and taxis turning up for school runs. So it would actually impact people a lot more. And you've totally discounted the concerns about ASB. Although, example, those children could still have an impact, but then them children may be less likely to have vulnerabilities that could be preyed on, and so that's kind of where I'd go with that one.
Any follow, Councillor Gavani? No, Councillor Stapleton, please.
Thank you. You mentioned right at the end of your speech there's a history of unresolved issues, and I just wondered if you could explain what that means, please.
Yeah, so I suppose what I'm talking about there is, so previously residents have fed back to me that this building was an Airbnb and there was lots of antisocial behaviour there, and they feed back to me that the owners were never really very responsive about that. I'm not really sure if these owners are the same or not, if I'm honest, so I don't really want to comment on them as an individual. But also, just as I've outlined earlier, is the ASB at the shops around the corner. It's really concerning with motorbikes, drug dealing, and quad bikes are really causing a real problem in our ward at the minute, and the police are working very hard to tackle that with limited resources, we all see in our own wards. But yeah, so what I would say is I think it's easy just to discount what the police are saying, but it genuinely is an issue, and the police are working really hard to solve the ASB, but at the minute it's there, so we should consider it.
Any follow-up, Councillor? Councillor Venner.
Yeah, Councillor Dixon, in the report, it says that ward members from Middleton Park have objected to this application and lists 2 of the reasons as decrease in property values in the area and giving rise to antisocial behaviour. Yet you've said in your opening speech that you are not anti-children or anti-children's homes, but actually do you recognise that as well as not being material planning considerations, things like decrease in property values and assuming that a children's home will bring antisocial behaviour is actually very much not the values we should be endorsing as corporate parents?
Thank you for that question. So what I would argue is I'm more in favour of council-run homes and supporting what the council do rather than profit-driven private homes, if I'm honest. And so, yeah, I'm not really sure where to go with that other than that. Sorry.
If I could come back on that. You've just said you're more in favour of children's homes, and yet you describe Cherry Trees as institutional provision, which is one of our children's homes, which is designed as a small family home. I would really question whether institutional provision is the right way of describing this planning application or Cherry Trees. This application is very much in line with our philosophy as a council to develop small group living homes for children. So I suppose I'm asking you to describe what kind of children's homes are you actually in favour of, because you've described a council home as institutional provision. So what kind of homes do you think we should approve as a planning panel?
Why does that necessarily, that one word, mean negativity? Institutional just means that it's owned by an institution. It's us. We are the institution. But I'm not saying that all council homes are perfect either. We've had issues with Cherry Trees as well. But what I would say as ward members, we feel there is more scope to resolve the issues and more confidence that the issues would get resolved if the council owns those properties. And whilst, yeah, Cherry Trees is a large provision, we welcome the smaller provision that council are creating and avoiding using these kind of homes, which are, making a lot of money from councils, basically. And it's interesting that children and families, if I read the report rightly, weren't keen on this either. So I'm guessing they're probably not going to use it. I'm guessing on that. So I think the issues I'm laying out today are that to protect young people, this is the wrong place for this facility. But not, like I say, I'm not opposed to them, and maybe institutional would probably the wrong word to use, but it's just a word.
Any follow-up?
I think my final follow-up question, I'm not finding your answers particularly coherent in terms of what your actual position is, but my final question is, do you agree with the officer commentary in the report that there is no evidence to substantiate the fear that children's homes bring antisocial behaviour?
So I've never accused the children's homes of bringing antisocial behaviour. What I've said is there a risk of antisocial behaviour here, that the young people would get coerced into it. There is significant issues of ASB on the street. I'm quite happy for you to go visit on a Friday, Saturday night at 9 p.m. and you'll see exactly what I mean. There is constant reports to police about antisocial behaviour, motorbikes, quads, cutting through the street as well. The racing through the street at night. So again, that is a totally different issue again, because then we've got like speeding and risk for young people as well. So it's about safety of young people, and my position's quite clear, I think, on care homes. I support them being built for, but I honestly don't support private care homes. I don't believe care should be provided by private providers. That's my own personal view, and I strongly believe that care provision should be in-house within council portfolios.
Okay. Any follow-up, Councillor? Councillor Rontry next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dixon, could you take us through the stats again, please? You spoke a bit about how many homes and places there were nearby and how near they were. Could you just run over that for us again, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so the ones I'm aware of in the ward at the moment, there's obviously Cherry Trees, which is council run. There's recently been applications which were successful for 2 more care homes, probably 300-400 yards away. And added to that, that's the ones I know of. There are probably more. But there's also lots of care provision for adults as well locally, which care provision is needed. But I do feel like our community is becoming a community care facilities, and it probably sounds extreme at this stage, but if we carry on, keep adding and adding, that's what we're going to become. And you might say, well, what's wrong with that? And I suppose what's wrong with that is it becomes a community of professional caregivers who probably don't really talk to each other much, don't live in the area, don't really have any affinity to the area, and it just loses that sense of community a little bit. Yeah, I think hopefully I've answered your question.
Okay, thanks. So, sort of 2 or 3, you're saying that recent applications, that small group home similar to this one, I guess. Right. I mean, I'm not convinced of what you said that this amounts to saturation. I mean, have you got a sense of how this compares with elsewhere in terms of density and levels of population and other parts of the city, like points of comparison?
The honest answer is I've not looked into that, but I've not seen many applications, as many in I've just seen we've got quite a lot of these in our ward, so that's probably all I could go on really, but yep.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you. Councillor Firth, I believe, was next.
Thank you, Chair. This is a regular issue that comes up, and we've had examples of applications like this in the past. And I just want to quote that, I just want to add a particular point here, that there are members of this panel that on previous occasions, the previous application, Stanmore Road, that raised the issue of the more and more vehicles will be coming than an ordinary family home. So to challenge that is quite interesting. In particular mention here, you've raised the issues that have been raised by both Children's Services and by the police, and both of those objections are sustained in the report. Can you just explain to us a bit more in terms of what work you do locally, or you've actually spoken directly with the police about it? Can you just give us a bit more information about that, please?
Yeah, in terms of the police, like all ward colleagues, we're constantly in communication with the police, about our neighbourhood policing teams, about what's going on locally, and our ward. I mean, I've spoken several times in full council. I've challenged Tracy Brabin on the exact same issue, and quads and motorbikes are dangerously ridden regular around our ward. So we're constantly meeting about the police. So to discount what the police are saying, I think is quite alarming, if I'm honest. And I feel that it's kind of disregarding our issues as a community, which is the blight of bikes and quads, making people feel unsafe in the community, and often putting people's lives at risk, including their own. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Councillor Firth.
Any other questions? Councillor Stables?
I just wanted to go back to the point about the number of children in care. So, because you've mentioned there's cherry trees and there's 2 more care homes, but I don't live in the area, so I just wondered how many young people that would mean in care in those homes.
I can't remember the exact figures, but I think Cherry Trees has about 10 young people. Is it not? Oh, okay. Maybe Councillor Venner can clarify that. Yeah. But I know. So the other 2 are just small 2 young people, or adults. I think some of them both. So.
Any other questions from members to the objector? Thank you very much for your time, Councillor Dixon. If you'd like to go back to the public gallery, please. Could I now invite the applicant up to the table? You will, if you can introduce yourself, then you'll have 4 minutes to Speak to us once you've indicated you're ready to start.
Good afternoon, panel. My name is Tosin Abi Philip, and I've lived in Leeds for 20 years now. And I'd just like to give a brief background. I used to set up Activate Leeds, what is called Activate Leeds, taking children off the streets. And I worked very closely with the police, and they gave us poker funding to do children's activities. And that was more than 20 years ago. We did that for 10 years, and I was not paid a salary. So I just want to talk about Latria Homes in a minute or two. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the time and considerations you have taken to look at this application and for having us here this afternoon. This proposal is rooted in a clear and pressing need for children's homes in Leeds and across the nation in general. There is a growing demand for high-quality, small-scale residential placements that can provide stability, therapeutic support, and consistent care for vulnerable young people. Many of these children have experienced trauma, disrupted family relationships, and instability in previous placements. Without the right support, their challenges can escalate, placing pressure on schools, emergency services, and the wider community. I'd also like to add that I was a single mother, I'm still a single mother, of 3 children, and they are grown up now and doing very well. My son is in London, working with the top 5 auditing firms in London, and my eldest is 27, and they've all flown the nest, except for my youngest daughter, who is in the University of Newcastle. So this home is designed to be part of the solution and is not based on profit-driven. It's too strenuous to be going into it without having a passion for children and then be profit-driven. I'm not sure about the profit in it at this moment. Latria Homes will operate as a highly regulated, professionally staffed environment that meets the Children's Homes Regulation and Ofsted's quality standards. The focus is on early intervention, emotional support, and structured routines, all of which reduce risk, promote positive behavior, and help young people develop the skills they need to thrive. At Latria Homes, we provide tailored care programs, therapeutic environments, and highly dedicated and experienced staff who are well-trained members to empower individuals to progress towards a better life and prepare them for independent living. We are able to offer complex needs services for up to just two young people who would be staffed with a minimum of 1-to-1 staffing. So this is not a large institutional setting. It is a small family-style home integrated into the community with a maximum of 2 young people living there at any one time. The staffing model ensures 24-hour supervision, robust safeguarding, and immediate response to any concerns. Staff will be trained in trauma-informed practice, de-escalation, and restorative approaches, ensuring that the home operates safely, calmly and respectfully. I understand the planning applications for children's homes can sometimes raise questions or concerns for local residents, as Councillor Dixon has been here to talk about. It is important to emphasize that well-run children's homes do not increase crime, antisocial behavior, or disruption. No. In fact, research consistently shows the opposite when children and vulnerable young people receive stable care. The entire community benefits from this, and most especially the children. The home will bring professional oversight, regular introspection, and close partnership working with the Leeds City Council.
Okay, thank you very much, because you finished bang on a sentence there, so I'm going to have to stop you there. Sometimes getting halfway in a sentence gets you an extra few seconds. Right, questions to the applicant, please. Councillor Firth and Councillor Venner, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the detail of inside the property. So if you could just please provide some more information in terms of how it will actually run. I know we've seen the layout in terms of potentially, in terms of how it plays out. And also, more generally, why is it that you've only selected for 2? Because I want to clarify whether you may come back in the future if this permission is granted and have for an expansion of numbers of people catered for in that particular property. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. My name is Janet. We are partners. So the property is presently a residential home where I stay. And it's a 3-bedded house. It has a large garden at the rear, and in front has quite a big size garden. We are taking on board 2 children because we want to ensure that the children have sufficient space to live in, and their privacy. It's quite important. It's going to be 1 room per child. Of course, it's a 3-bed. The 3rd room, which is a single room, will be used as a office where we keep important documents. And there's a living room downstairs, and there is a dining room as well. That's a lot of space for children to play around with and movement. So it's as a family unit property, which will give the children privacy, a good space to move in for movement, and it's definitely that's the maximum that the house would accommodate, because we can't stuff children in without giving a quality care for them and good space. So that is why we are onboarding 2 children only.
Thank you very much for that further information and really clarifying a bit more meat on the bone. One thing I want to ask is 2 things. Just because it's been raised by the objector about the registering of the company, can I ask how many previous homes you've also managed, or whether this is your first enterprise in terms of your current business? And my second question is, serious concern has been raised about the number of vehicles and parking. Obviously, that's something that's regularly come up in previous applications, as I've talked about, as has been discussed at this panel in various parts of the city. Is it absolutely set in stone that the changeovers have to happen at those particular times?
Partially. Yes. I don't think there's a problem at all with the parking. Like you've all seen, there's sufficient parking. However, the staff will resume at 8 o'clock, so changes will be circa 30 minutes before, to give sufficient time. And they're adequately trained, they're adults, so they can move quietly, even if they have to reverse, cars out of the driveway. And there's also parking for a car on the outside. So we've got four spaces for parking for cars. So it's not restricted to 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. They need to be there maybe half an hour or even an hour before that time.
And sorry, if I may add, these children are not, they're not going to be driving in or out. They don't have a vehicle. The house has the capacity of accommodating up to 4 cars. And of course, the staff will be, at every point in time, there will be 3 staff around, and the pick up and drop off to school will be done by the staff. So there is no concern about having a parking issue or anything like that. Thank you.
No, thank you, and thank you for your answers. The concern is, unfortunately, it has been a significant issue that's been raised, and it has been something that, therefore, we're just asking questions to try and get down into the detail. Because you mentioned there will be 3 members of staff. Obviously, at night, they're probably all, obviously, not sleeping there, they're awake throughout. I did ask about whether the changeover was set in stone, and I did also ask, if possible, given that it had been raised by the objector, you could give some more information about your previous experience in this area, and it's not to question your professionability, but it's also to understand the operation of other enterprises that you may be involved with elsewhere, and how that may be able to reflect what will happen at this property.
There is a potential to employ the home manager, so according to Ofsted, because we will be regulated by Ofsted. So we're going to be employing, professionals. I have, managed children before I brought this for you guys. This was like 20 years ago, whilst I was, helping to take off children from the streets, children whose parents were in prison or as drug addicts rather. So we are passionate about children and making sure that they are successful in life and they are deeply integrated, especially those with behavioral EBDs, yeah. So I think as a mother as well, we bring that passion from there as a mother of 3, and all the moral issues. I train my children in that area, and none of them have given me any trouble, touch wood. I think they're 27, they can't do that anymore. And that's my experience of running Flea Club, which I handed over 10 years ago to the Catholic Church in Crossgates. And also I worked very, very closely with the police in West Yorkshire, with a lot of the councillors and the MPs, and they can testify to that if any references is needed.
1 second, Councillor. Can I just direct members that the relevance of whether or not they've had previous business in this field or not is not a material consideration, and the regulation is a matter of Ofsted, and you must take that into consideration when making your determination on planning matters. I allow the question for transparency to allow them to answer, but you are not to take that into consideration as members when making your determination. Was there a follow-up, Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was leading to this final question, which is, given there has been an objection from children and families, would you like to respond directly to it?
I didn't get that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. Like we have said earlier, Lateral Home will operate in a very high regulated, professional, staffed environment. We are onboarding staffs that are well experienced in this field. It doesn't stop there. There's going to be regular training for staff to be able to meet specific needs of each child that will be in the home. This is all. We understand that the planning application for children home can sometimes raise questions or concern for local residents.
I'm sorry, I'm going to intervene here. Could you actually please answer the question put forward by the councillor and respond directly to the comments made by the department, please, rather than giving us another extenuation of your values? Please answer the question directly.
Yeah, thank you. We are passionate about raising children with EDB. These children are not bad or nasty children. The children with EDB they have post-trauma stress disorder, which resulted to anxiety disorder and mood disorder. We have put a lot of plans in place to be able to help these children to live a good life, to support them to have a good independent future. This is also to support and empower children in order to live a good and respectable life in future. So we have put in place so many policy and procedure to be able to achieve this. And also, this will be regularly reviewed by Ofsted because we are Ofsted regulated. So we are here to provide quality home for the children in terms of giving them support, full support for what they need, supporting them to have a good skill and to be able to have a good and promising future, if that answers your question.
I'm afraid it doesn't, but we're going to move on to the next. Councillor Venner, please.
Thank you. I'm absolutely not endorsing the views expressed by objectors that children who are looked after contribute to antisocial behaviour in an area. But I did note the concerns by West Yorkshire Police about the fact that this is an area with high antisocial behaviour. As a council, as you've heard, we have a home in this area, Cherry Trees, which has been there a very long time. When we're purchasing new homes under our small group living scheme, we do look at the suitability of an area for children who are vulnerable, particularly children who are vulnerable to sexual and criminal exploitation. Do you think this is an appropriate area for children who are extremely vulnerable, given not only objectors but also the police have highlighted this is an area with high rates of crime, antisocial behaviour? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, so we have done a lot of risk assessments and mitigations as well. So we've done quite a lot of research in the areas of antisocial behaviour, and it's more like other areas within Leeds as well. I live on the other side near Seacroft, and I don't think antisocial behaviour is kind of weighted against each other. They are more or less the same. And we have, during our research, we found out that the area is most affected by noise, youth disturbances, like, we rightly said, people riding the bikes. But that is the reason why we have a home where children are nurtured, to respect other people's properties, and also we have staff that will help to guide them against antisocial behaviour and against any sort of peer pressure. And the area also have a medium crime rating, so it is suitable for a children's care home.
Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, thank you very much for your time. If you'd like to go back to the public gallery, it's now questions for the officers. Councillor Venner.
Thank you. I've got 4 questions. So, my first question, Councillor Firth has already referred to the fact that I previously brought an objection to a children's home in my ward because it didn't meet the criteria we use in children's services when purchasing homes for our small group living scheme. And that couldn't be taken into account because it's guidance used by children's services, not planning. So there was a recommendation that this go to Development and Plans Panel so that the same high standards we use can inform planning decisions, because my argument was we shouldn't be approving planning applications for homes that we would not purchase ourselves within children's services and think were good enough for our children as corporate parents. Because with the objection I brought,
Councillor Fenner, could
sorry,
you
I'll
please
get
move
to my
to a
question. My
you're making a
question
comment.
was, has this happened? Has this been taken to Development Plans Panel so that the learning we've got from within children's services around the homes we purchase can inform planning policy and therefore planning decisions?
The short answer to that at the moment is no. It has been noted, but as we're going through a planning review at the moment, it will form the wider policies of that review because it has to go into a wider piece of work.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, as a council, we recognise care experience as a protected characteristic. That was passed by Executive Order in February 2024 when I was still a Children's Cabinet member. That means we recognise care experience as having parity with all other protected characteristics. It's a council policy. It's not the National Equality Act. The law hasn't been changed nationally, but it is council policy. So my question is, why isn't it referenced in this paper? I mean, it should be referenced in all planning papers because it should be referenced in the equality section. Part of passing the resolution meant that all equality impact assessments that the council does should consider care experience alongside other protected characteristics, and references in all council papers to equality should include care experience alongside the other protected characteristics. But this feels like a particular omission in an application for a children's home. So I just wanted to ask, why isn't the fact we recognise care experience as a protected characteristic in this paper?
Could I maybe refer to a legal advice on this before the planning officer comes in, just in terms of what we have to, bearing in mind the national legislation around planning?
Yes, obviously the protected characteristics that are referred to in this report are those that are identified under the Equality Act. And that is what an officer's report will always focus on is the national legislation and national policy. Yes, local policy as well, but that's local policy on planning, because that's then in accordance with section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act, which tells us what we have to look at and take into account when we are making decisions on planning matters. And that's reinforced by the National Planning Policy Framework and how that tells us to make decisions on planning matters. So that's why we focus on the criteria and the definitions in the national legislation in the officer report.
Follow?
I won't get us caught up in this for too long, but can I request that this maybe is also considered a development plans panel, because it is policy of the council, and therefore I would have thought it should be informing planning. I mean, it's not only children's services that are corporate parents, the whole council is, and this is a decision the council made to recognise care experience as having parity with all the other protected characteristics. So I know we can't get into this discussion now, but if I could make that point. The third question that I had, again, Councillor Firth did refer to earlier, it touching on the objection I previously brought. I would like to put the challenge to you that I don't think we should be writing in planning applications for children's homes that they don't have more comings and goings than family homes. Looked after children have to have social workers, independent reviewing officers and independent visitors.
Paul, this sounds more like a comment again, Councillor Vernon. Is it a question or a comment?
Okay.
If you want to comment, you can bring up in the comment section. Sorry, I need to stick to the...
That's fine, I'll bring it up in comments.
Councillor Firth.
Thank you very much. Getting back to... Oh. Right, okay.
It's meant to be Councillor Rowntree first, I apologise, and then Councillor Firth. I got my list the wrong way around.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing from me. You'll be aware, I asked Councillor Dixon about the notion that the area where this home's located is saturated with care facilities. And just what do you make of that? I mean, given that you're recommending the application be approved, presumably you don't agree. Can you explain why not? Thank you.
Basically, with regard to saturation, if there was an issue with it, it would be under policy. We don't have a policy specifically limiting or saying that a specific number within an area is a saturation. I am aware of the two cases that Councillor Dixon did bring up. I was the case officer on both of them. And generally looking at the wider area of the entire of Middleton Park ward, in this case, possibly a couple of dwellings within a wider residential area isn't considered a saturation when you take into account the number of residential single-family homes and the couple of residential care homes. So without policy guidance saying to us, this is the number, we can't, in terms of planning, we just generally look at the wider area.
Okay, I mean, thank you. I mean, I can't myself see from what we've learned here that we are talking about anything that can be described as saturation. But do you think there's a bit of a gap there, that there isn't so, there aren't numbers behind this in order to address this question?
I mean, again, it's something that perhaps development plans should look at, because as part of their wider reconsideration of policy, I accept that, but you'd end up having something like the HMO policy potentially, because what we've heard today from Councillor Dixon and what Ema's just said about the numbers, the other two were in Middleton, yes. This one's in Belle Isle, the others that were referred to, so that's effectively 6 kids out of the wider population of Beeston, sorry, not Beeston, Belle Isle rather, and Middleton, and then Councillor Dixon himself has referred to potentially another 6. Now, I don't know the population of these two areas offhand, but I'm not quite sure that potentially 12 kids is actually a saturation point by any stretch of the imagination.
Can I make a comment on this point, because I think we may have clarified, because there is some inspectorate guidance on what is saturation within the HMO market. So maybe if we could just turn to legal around what that was, because I believe it was 10% in a relatively small geographical area of dwellings. Would I be right in remembering that as roughly where the inspectorate came when this has gone before the inspectorate before? when it came to HMOs, just as a quasi-example.
I can't remember that, Steve. Are you better placed to answer that?
No, I can't remember the detail, but on a day-to-day basis, when we're dealing with HMO applications in terms of saturations, they're very often actually in terraced areas, and we have to look really at whether there's a significant change of character of that area because of the introduction of the HMOs. And often the answer is no. I mean, you know, you look at some terraces that might be, I don't know, 10, 15 terraces long, and there might be 2 or 3. Is that a saturation? It's a bit of a fact and degree thing at the end of the day. We do have information specifically on HMOs in targeted areas as to where we might think there's a lot, and therefore we look out for it and actually count the number of HMOs, and we use the information that we can get from rates and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, we don't have that level of information for this, and the only point I'm trying to make is Belle Isle and Middleton are very big areas. This is not an awful lot of people. And, you know, at the end of the day, and I'm going to sound overly sympathetic, and trust me, I'm not. I hate everybody, so I'm very completely completely unbiased in this respect. No, I am joking. But where if we don't use properties like this, where?
Any fellow Councillor Panham? Councillor Firth?
Thank you very much, Chair. Given we've discussed the Children's Services point of view, and that's not a material planning consideration, however, it is concerning, and we shouldn't take that into consideration. We don't want to test the judicial system, as has been asked to on previous occasions in these particular sorts of applications. Can I ask, in terms of the East Yorkshire Police concern, then in particular, do we have any further details from officers what we can consider around that? Appreciate that it's been effectively dismissed in this particular report, but to actually have an objection from West Yorkshire Police is quite stark compared to the previous applications that we've had. And I'd like to ask, has it come from the MPT, the Neighbourhood Policing Team, a particular officer, or could you give any more detail around where it's originated? Thank you.
With regard to West Yorkshire Police's comments, we have seen recently a general spike in their comments across, especially in the east side of the city where I work. I'm a planning officer for. It seems very much to be blanketed. It doesn't seem to be very discriminative on specific areas. It is a general concern across the area, and they are specifically citing data, general data on crime. It's not specifically youth crime or anything. It is from the data we get, it is the blanket reports from them. I'm not sure if that's answered your question or not.
A different term to what because I'm just reading it here on paragraph 47. It's very generic in terms of the comments they're making about a wider area, and it's not specific or targeted. And you know, at the end of the day, we have to work with the evidence that we've got, and officers have made a judgment, which obviously is contrary to what's coming here. So we have obviously made the judgment that there's limited weight can be added to this, simply because there's limited evidence that's been provided, because it's very generic.
Please can I ask where it's come from then within West Yorkshire Police?
It was just a general comment made. There wasn't a specific team who made the comment. It was from because the objection we received through the format it comes in, it just said West Yorkshire Police to the top of it. No name or team was specifically given by it.
Can I ask, as a matter of, and I will raise this separately with colleagues, that we actually get some clarity going forward on that process with the police, because if they're just putting in general comments, that would cover antisocial behaviour and crime over half the city. Sorry, Councillor Firth.
I was about to say the same thing, because the concern is that from recent memory, we haven't seen particular West Yorkshire Police comments or objections. In this instance, we have an objection. And that's why a red light is flashing on the dashboard for me. So that's where I wanted to take that into consideration. I wanted to ask another question to officers, which is in relation to the parking and the amount of... And this has been a regular issue that comes up at Stanmore's, the one that we had in Rodley way back when, a few panels ago. is about parking and about changeovers. There wasn't an answer from the applicant about whether those changeovers could be changed. The reason I asked the question about the situation about experience was because they were saying that staff would turn up half an hour earlier. However, they've never run home before. That was what I was trying to get to the point. So I just wanted to ask, in terms of is there any way in which we can apply conditions, or in other ways, is there any way we can look at parking around that particular issue, or can the officers comment on what has been done, given that's been a particular issue raised quite significantly by objectors?
Sorry, I'm not trying to steal anything from EMA, but there is a condition on here for shift changes to try and control it. I don't have the specific detail. EMA might. But one of the difficulties with all of these things that keep coming forward is that it's a little bit like the cart before the horse in a way, because I could be here in front of you doing this with absolutely no experience whatsoever, and trying my hardest to convince you to agree to change the use of where I live into the same sort of thing. But the stumbling block, if I get past this, because from a policy point of view, there's not really a reason why you could say no to it, is when then you get to Ofsted, because that's when we're checking qualifications, experience, ability, and the quality of the home. That's the problem that faces you with all of these things, and we don't have that policy basis, or indeed the intelligence that was referred to earlier by Councillor Rowntree, in terms of clusters. So it's a very difficult situation, but as I said before, and I'm not trying to be overly sympathetic for any stretch of the imagination, but if Leeds City Council, for whatever reason, can't provide this in this detail, but the market is open to private providers, yes, it is a business, undoubtedly. I understand everything that was said by the applicants about, profit and all the rest of it, but it is a business, because at the end of the day, there will be monies paid for this. But it's not different to any other business. The thing is here, and you'd like to think everything that's been said is genuine in terms of the care and quality that the two ladies will provide. And we can't really question that, because that becomes an Ofsted issue at the end of the day. So, I mean, I must admit, it leaves me, in a difficult situation personally about these things. But because I think I have some sympathy with what Councillor Dixon was saying as well, to be honest with you, in a way. But on the other hand, this is where we are in terms of the provision for young vulnerable children, that hopefully will get people such as the applicant to give them the proper care and attention that they deserve. So it's a difficult one, but in terms of whether you could refuse this or not, I think the answer is no. And we had the same conversation when we were talking about the two in Middleton that EMA was involved in, same sort of thing. I'm going to leave John to talk about the car parking, because obviously you did raise a question about that. But it is very difficult under these circumstances and the regime that we have at the moment to actually say no to them. And you have to take it on trust that hopefully Ofsted will manage it properly or regulate it properly, because we can't.
Yeah. The car parking issue is very simple. We have a standard for this type of development, and the expected level of parking for this type of development is 1 space per 3 residents. There's only 2 residents here, so to be policy compliant, this development only needs 1 parking space, which it's clearly got.
Any follow-up? Yeah. I think I had Councillor Brooks next, and then we'll come on to Councillor Stable.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the questions that I wanted to ask have already been covered, really. But I do feel like a lot of the things on this panel have not actually been material to planning, and also quite
could you frame this as a question?
Hostile towards children under our care as councillors. So I just wanted to say that, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
That was a comment, but there we go. Councillor Stables.
It was actually following up from Councillor Firth's point, and I've been thinking about this, the car parking, and I'm still concerned about it, and I don't know whether that is something that we can put a condition in, because when we did the site visit today, it's been stated that you could have 3 cars parked on the driveway, and it seemed clear to us that you couldn't unless you're in an unusually narrow car, because actually the middle car would be where the door is, and there's a step out or something that comes out at that point, and you physically couldn't get out of the car. So I don't think you can get more than 2 cars on there and be able to, unless you stay in the car and be able to get out. But the point is that it's just this concern. I'm not.
Could we frame this as a question, please? Because this is going into a comment
again
as well.
Oh, sorry, you're quite right. I'm thinking about how is there a way of putting a condition on the? It is this turnover, isn't it? If you've got 6 cars at 8 o'clock in the morning, how's that going to be managed? I don't know how we do it, but is there a way of managing this safely so that it doesn't cause absolute chaos in the road?
I'm going to disagree with you, Councillor Stables, about the parking arrangement straight away. There was space, I think, quite clearly to get 2 vehicles off street before you hit the step. I think you could get past the step, to be fair. I have a similar situation, I mentioned it on site at my house, and I do it in a wider car than the one that was parked there. And then you do have space between the house and the garage where you could open the doors. So I think there is potentially, as John said, I think it was John said there were 3 spaces. But the other thing is, the street is unregulated, so they can park on the street. It's not something that we could enforce, and we couldn't do the same for anybody else that wants to park on that street. Unfortunately, they were parking on the grass as well, which is despicable personally, but never mind. So, no, a condition would not be work. It'd be ultra vires, simply because, the clincher ultimately is what John said. Like it or loathe it, the way the policy actually operates is back to front in a way, because it's related to the number of kids, and it's 1 space per 2 kids, not how many carers might be turning up at any one time. And we are second guessing here, because who knows, they may be employed locally, some of them, they're not necessarily all going to be there. So the thing is, I think there's more spaces than available than you think. There's the street that's unregulated, and John just said that the policy only asks for 1.
So should we have a policy about care homes and about provision of parking for care homes, which is clearly different to normal residential use? Because you've just made the point, it's not about the children who are staying there, it's actually about the people who need to travel to get to the care home. And I agree with you, you don't know we're never going to know, are we, how many are going to walk and how many are going to use public transport, but that's the case for residential use as well. So should we have a policy, should we consider a policy for specifically for care homes, because this is going to be an ongoing issue in plans panels?
I think it's into slightly dangerous territory, is this, because I'm going to give you another example where I think it all falls apart. And simply, where I live at the moment, there are a number of bungalows on the street, and there's a number of elderly persons. I can't even tell you how many carers come 3 or 4 times a day and park on the street, but for short periods of time. And I don't think this really is necessarily that different, in that, you will have people coming, maybe they may be staying longer, but I'll just reiterate, if you've got 2 to 3 spaces, and certainly 2 spaces, but when you only need 1, we don't have that background to actually do it. Now, whether anybody would want to take forward internally here to create a specific policy for these is a different matter. I mean, I don't know. I'm not even sure whether it comes through planning or highways, to be honest with you. I mean, we can raise it again. I'll raise it with Jonathan, and he can then take it forward, and maybe it'll end up at DPP. But unfortunately, at the moment, no.
It's my understanding, Chair, that the MPPF covers children's homes in terms of class use anyway. So I don't understand what the utility would be in having specific children's homes policies.
In short, it probably wouldn't, because you'd have to have it for every other residential type housing situation, and that would be a never-ending stream of conflicting, because what happens if that house then changes use in a couple of years down the line? So, Councillor Brooks.
And also, it's not been proven that children's homes cause an issue in communities in the first place. So we're going around in circles. Can we move to the vote, please, Chair?
Any other questions for the officers? Moving to comments then, please. Councillor Venner.
Yeah, thank you. I feel I have to say, as having been the cabinet member for Children's Services for a long time, I do have to say I do find it very disappointing that elected members who are corporate parents are feeding the narrative through the objections around children looked after contributing to antisocial behaviour. It was mortifying to read the comments about property prices in the report. It is very much our belief and our practice as a council that children looked after should be part of our communities living in ordinary residential homes. And I would add that children's homes are staffed 24/7. There is a staff team there that you can approach if there are problems. And most homes have a kind of stakeholder management type policy and approach where they will go out of their way to form good relationships with the neighbours and have ways that neighbours can feedback if there are any problems. I would like to challenge, this is what I was saying earlier, Chair, when you quite rightly said it was a comment, not a question. Much as I entirely support small group living homes, and I drove our policy around that when I was in the cabinet role, I would challenge the comment that appears that there are not more comings and goings in children's homes than there are in ordinary family homes. And I wonder if maybe we should take a view from Children's Services on this. Children looked after have to have social workers, independent reviewing officers, independent visitors. They're all statutory requirements. As the applicant said, homes are very regulated. You get, are they monthly Section 40 visits? Ofsted every year. Plus obviously staff team coming and going and other workers that are working, you know, with children. I would question whether that's accurate to say that there are not more comings and goings at a children's home than there are in a family home. I would like to make the point, even though I will pursue the issue about how it can be factored into decision making. We do recognise care experience as a protected characteristic. And I would finally, as my final comment, I do want to reiterate the importance of this issue being referred to development plans panels so that we can develop local planning policy that fits with our policy in children's services for our own purchasing of small group living homes, because I do really strongly believe we shouldn't be approving applications for homes that wouldn't meet our own criteria. Having said that, because we don't have that policy in place, I will be supporting this application, but even though I don't know that this would meet our criteria as a council when we were acting as corporate parents in our own children's homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Similar to Fiona, I'm not aware of the detail of that policy as yet unwritten. So looking at the application at hand and what has been presented to us in the document, which is what we're supposed to be making the decision on, the application seems sound. It seems to have a good level of amenity for the children. From what I can gather, all of the bedrooms have windows. There's only going to be 2 children living there. There's a massive garden where they can maybe have a little play with a football or a basketball, I don't know, whatever slightly older kids do. Yeah, so I mean, I'm quite happy to support this application, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Firth.
Thank you very much, Chair. When the application that came up for Stanmore Road came up, the objector, who was sat on this panel, said to test the judicial system, and it's in the minutes that it is considered that more vehicles will be coming and going than if it was an ordinary family home. At the time, I actually put forward the motion to approve that application because of the fact of the nature of what was raised, but I'm glad to hear that that's been discussed. However, it is a material planning consideration to talk about parking and to talk about traffic disturbance, and therefore it's a very valid thing to raise and has been raised by both the objectors and also we've discussed in the questioning. However, following the fact there are no material planning considerations that we can use to actively stop this, given what's been considered about the complaint that I'm concerned about the lack of information about it, but from West Yorkshire Police, we can't consider the one from the Children's Services, but that's raised and on the record anyway. Therefore, I'm happy, unless anyone else wants to raise further comment, to move the motion in terms of what the officers have set out.
I would like to give those that have indicated that they want to speak a chance to speak.
I'm just asking if there's anyone else. That's all.
Councillor Staples.
Thank you. Do you want to switch off?
Of course.
Yeah, just to say, I'm absolutely, in case I didn't make this clear, I'm absolutely in favour of small living children's homes. Absolutely in favour of it. And I think it's been a good discussion to explore all the issues that were brought up by Councillor Dixon. I equally don't, having looked at it in the round and considered all the issues, and there are some issues in terms of, for local residents, in terms, I think, of impact on the area in terms of highways, but we can't do anything about that. But I think it's good that we've discussed it and that this has been taken, that we consider this going forward as something potentially that we look at as a policy. But in the round, absolutely, I'm in favour of, agreeing with this application.
And I'll just take a moment to comment on it, because I think there's been some relevant points around policy raised, and where local meets the MPPF is in an interesting place, bearing in mind the MPPF is designed to deal with all planning authorities. And I think it's fair to say the government is approaching it from a point of view that the MPPF should be standardised across the country. So actually the challenge to local policies is going to become more difficult. Now, that doesn't say that we cannot, as a local authority, advocate for our standard to become the national standard. And certainly we'll take those conversations to colleagues in Development Plans Panel and our policy development as we move forward with the review of our policies. Though I would just note what Steve has said is, there are households where there are very vulnerable adults who receive significant traffic movements, and we cannot necessarily create a policy for every specific situation. But I think the point is validly made that there is likely more traffic movement, and it's how you deal with that in policy terms. Ultimately, in the end, it's compliant. And so I think we've had a proposer. Can I have a seconder? Oh, I've got a few. I'm going to see the first one, which was Councillor Brooks. So could we just sum up where we are, please, Steve, and then we'll proceed to the vote.
As it stands at the moment, the recommendation for approval subject to the specified conditions as unamended is before members to vote on.
Are we all clear what we're voting on? All those in favour?
Unanimous, I think.
All those against? Any abstentions? Could you please confirm the result of the vote? Thank you very much. Item number 10, date and time of the next meeting is proposed to be Thursday, the 26th of February 2026 at 11:30. Bearing in mind it's my birthday the day after, if anyone brings cakes, they may get extra questions. Oh no. That concludes the business of today's meeting. Thank you for your attendance and contributions. I now declare the meeting closed, and could I request that members of the public make their way out of the building? Thank you.